symbol of a more open, liberal China that didn't come to be.
Before his arrest in 1989, Bao Tong was policy chief for reformist Communist Party Premier Zhao Ziyang. But after the party violently put down pro-democracy protests across the country that year, Zhao was put under house arrest and Bao sentenced to 7 years solitary confinement in Beijing's Qingchun prison. After his release, he remained under constant surveillance but still spoke frequently to journalists. Here he is speaking to NPR's Anthony Kuhn in 2008, right before Beijing hosted its first Olympics.
I think
the reason why we have not seen liberalization from the party is because they never intended to liberalize, he said. Emily Fang, NPR News, Taipei, Taiwan.
The number of people applying for first-time unemployment benefits rose slightly last week. The Labor Department says weekly initial jobs claims increased by 7,000 to 225,000. That's from 218,000 the previous week. The 4-week moving average, a less volatile measure, fell 250 to 218,750. The Dow is up 874 points, Nasdaq up 589, S&P 500 up 159. This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Netflix, presenting Is That Black Enough for You? From writer and director Elvis Mitchell comes a love letter to black cinema of the 70s, celebrating the films and talent that changed the game. On Netflix, November 11th.
You are listening to Boston Public Radio, live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim and Marjorie are out today. They'll be back tomorrow, although in studio, not here at the BPL. I'm Jared Bowen, and I'm here with Sue O'Connell. Great to be reunited.
Good to be with you, Jared. We've been busy counting the ballots, so that's why we kind of had a rocky start, but we're here and ready to go. We're down at the Boston Public Library. You know, there's a Sue sandwich. There's not a Jared sandwich, but there will be soon.
Well, some days we can't have a spicy Jared. That's all I have to say about that. Well, we're going to start the show again today, as we have many days, with politics, and we're joined on Zoom by Fall River's own E.J. Dionne. E.J. is an opinion columnist for The Washington Post. He's also a government professor at Georgetown University, a visiting professor at Harvard University, a senior fellow in governance studies at the Brookings Institution. E.J., it's great to see you, and we should mention that this is all in advance of seeing you in person tonight at the John F. Kennedy Library.
I'm really looking forward to that event. There are a bunch of good people, including my dear Washington Post colleague Dan Baltz. So we're going to have a fun time talking about the election. Could I just say it's a real honor to join the show at the BPL. My late mom was a librarian in Fall River, so I love libraries. And as a student, I actually did some research at the BPL. I love that place. So thank you.
Absolutely, EJ. So, before we dive completely into the election, can you just help us understand, and all of us who are not experts on this, why was the expectation, historically, why is the expectation that when there's a midterm election, which happens in the midterm of a sitting president, why was there an expectation that the Republicans were going to just completely kill and do an overwhelming red tide?
Right. Well, I got to say, I was a resistor to the red tide narrative because...
Yeah, me too, I would say, for the record. Me too.
Yeah, if you looked at the polling, the good polling as opposed to the partisan polling, and I think that was part of it. But if you looked at the good polling, it showed us that this was a very close election. We are still a very divided country, and that's exactly what happened. There was no Republican red tide. I think there were a couple of things going on. First, there were polling averages that got skewed by Republican-leaning polls that suggested that some races were either way closer or Democrats are actually behind in races where they were slightly ahead. You may have seen that up a little bit in New Hampshire, for example, where Maggie Hassan won by quite a bit. And I know a lot of people were on the Democratic side were extremely worried about that race on the weekend. The second is historical expectations. I mean, what happened is really an outlier because generally the president's party loses in midterm elections because the angry people turn out and supporters are often, well, this isn't as good as we thought, and they stay home. And what you saw was really substantial turnout. One of the things that I thought might happen, but that was not expected, is that young people would vote in a substantial way and really help the Democrats. And that's what they did. The young voters turned out at a very significant rate and voted 2-1 for the Democrats. But I think just a lot of people were taken in by spin because when you look race by race, a lot of these were just close races, and that's what they turned out to be.
Well, as we start to make meaning of what this translates for the future and what this portends for the future, rather, you started out by saying we're a divided country. Are we still as divided as we thought we were? Does this reveal something about how perhaps there's a coming together or there's a lot more nuance that maybe media wants to give the country credit for?
Yes, I agree. First of all, there's always more nuance than the media wants to give anybody credit for. I think it's something we should all bear in mind. I think that there is quite a bit of unity in being tired of Donald Trump, whether that's the outright opponents who turned out in substantial numbers. And I think that's the other thing people miss, that there was this appeal on democracy, the fear of extremism and the anger at Trump was very strong. And also that the backlash against overturning Roe v. Wade did not go away. And you could see that in the pre-election polling, too, by where women were. But when you looked at the exit polling, 58% of Americans have a negative view of Donald Trump. And I think you're starting to see it just a little bit. You're seeing it, for example, in the Wall Street Journal editorial page this morning, and from some Republicans who are saying, you know, we can't cling forever to Trump and what he wants us to do. And the question will be whether Republicans are willing to risk some of the ire of his voters in the electorate. Let's look at what happened in Massachusetts and in Maryland. These were both states with moderate Republican governors who were quite popular. The party nominated Trumpists in both cases, and they were blown out by Maura Healey in Massachusetts, Wes Moore in Maryland. And I think you saw Trumpist candidates do very badly, so much that Trump was trying to blame his endorsement of Dr. Oz on his wife, although apparently he's out there saying that was a media invention.
It's always a media invention when somebody else says it. When he says it, it's the real thing. EJ, you know, someone said to me yesterday, there's a reason why presidents, after they leave office, go away. And they, especially immediately after they go away, and they don't go out and campaign until the very, end of whatever the election season is. And you didn't see Joe Biden out on the trail very much either with his low popularity ratings. You've addressed it a little bit, but, Trump being in the mix so much, and with, both a passionate base, but also a lot of high negatives. I spoke to, I think, a reporter or two in almost every swing state over the past couple of weeks, in New Hampshire most especially. And each reporter said to me that even though there's lots of money being poured in and there's a lot of attention on the race, except for the hardcore primary voters, the big Ds and the big Rs who are voting, there was a lot of, I don't want to say apathy, but not a lot of excitement around the races. And they would say it was because of the negativity that was being generated by the ads and by the role of Trump, they said specifically, in the race. Are we looking at a moment where we might be able to say, listen, this two-party system, this primary voting that we do, which knocks out a lot of moderate candidates that most people might vote for, is there any soul-searching happening with that on the Republican and Democratic sides?
Just a couple of points. One, I've said for years that that politicians are the only profession that regularly runs advertisements against their own profession. That if we advertise commercial products the way we do politicians and have the attack ads, it would be, don't eat at that fast food joint, they'll poison you, or don't fly on that airline, they crash. That's what political advertising is like. So it is very dispiriting. And I heard a great story that in Nevada, where the unions were working very hard for Senator Cortez Masto, people were so sick of politics and all the negative ads they were seeing, is that the unions would begin by asking people to sign a petition for local rent control in Las Vegas and only back into the campaign because they thought if they were there campaigning in the election, people would shut the doors. I do think that you saw a real backlash against Trump-like candidates. New Hampshire is a great example, not only of Maggie Hassan's victory, but Chris Pappas up there won by a big margin against a former aide to President Trump. It's, a substantial margin. I think it was 20,000 votes in the end. And you saw that in other states as well. What I would like to set up is the idea that we're paying a lot of attention to Ron DeSantis, who really blew it out in Florida, winning by 19 points. And I think there are some anti-DeSantis candidates who represent more a marriage of moderation and progressivism. I'd point to Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. They too won by very big margins in states Donald Trump carried in 2016. I think they are among the people we're going to be paying attention to going forward. And I think that speaks to what you said. Last point, a lot of talk about more states adopting the single transferable vote or instant runoff system that they have in some races in Maine, that they have in Alaska. I think that would open up the system. I'm an advocate of that system. They use it in Cambridge elections.
Yep.
And I think it's a good system. It actually has a paradoxical effect. It opens things up for third parties that might be to the left or right, or libertarian, but it also gives centrist candidates a shot that they don't have, particularly now in the Republican Party.
Jared, there's actually a race in Maine, a congressional race that, if it comes down to the wire, it could be us looking at Georgia for the Senate runoff, and there could be a Maine congressional runoff that theoretically could hold the balance of power because of their runoff
But it's
system.
an instant runoff, so
Right.
people number the ballot, so you don't have to vote again. If you're
right.
If you're first, you can put in who your second choice is, so you can count it right away. I mean, well, right away, fairly quickly.
There's no more right away, EJ.
Look at Arizona and Nevada.
Returning to this notion of the more moderate Democrats, Governor-elect Maura Healey among them, and what it, again, portends for compromise going forward, and whether there's a mandate there, I want to ask you about what this means for the governing body to take place in January. But first, let's hear from Governor-elect Maura Healey at her event with Governor Baker yesterday, talking about the broad goals of her administration, where she also thanked voters.
I am grateful to the voters of Massachusetts for the opportunity to serve. My message, our message to people is, as I said last night, no matter who you voted for, we're going to be an administration that will work with everyone and that will work hard to work for everyone. People have given us a mandate not just to act, but to deliver results. And we have said for a long time that we will be about a team that is focused on getting results, delivering for people, getting things done.
Well, of course, that's here in Massachusetts, where, for the most part, the constituency was very happy with its Republican governor for the last 8 years. But what do we see in Washington in January? Is there an expectation that they have to operate a little bit differently, that people are fed up based on how they've just voted?
I think, by the way, that moment is very interesting. I think Maura Healey is part something brand new and partly Charlie Baker's third term. I actually went up there and wrote a column about her in August and got to watch her campaign in my hometown of Fall River, by the way. And I interviewed her and asked her about Charlie Baker, and not a negative word crossed her lips about Charlie Baker. She was clearly trying to win back all those Charlie Baker Democrats and independents, and clearly that's what she did. I'm afraid Washington, especially if the Republicans eke out a narrow majority in the House, that's where some of the projections are, although nobody knows yet if that's what's going to happen. I think it'll be very messy, partly because, it's not Charlie Baker's Republican Party here in Washington. It's a much, much, much more conservative and right-wing party. And I think they're pretty determined to make life hell for Joe Biden. You wonder, will there be any soul searching over the fact that they did not win that big majority they expected? Whatever their majority is, it's going to be very narrow. I would like to come on here and say, oh, yeah, everybody is going to be very reasonable because we have big problems to solve. I don't see that in the cards, and I hope I'm wrong about that.
So, EJ, we just saw for the past 2 years the Democrats who had a majority trying to corral both the more moderate part of the party and their members, as well as the more progressive part of their party. I mean, I would argue when all is said and done, Biden had a very successful 2 years, and the making of the sausage all worked out in the end. But to your point, the Republicans are going to have a Tea Party moment here if they get control of the House, where they're trying to keep the far-right extremist election-denying whack jobs involved, as well as the more moderate lawmakers involved. We're probably going to see hearings for Hunter Biden's laptop. We're probably going to see efforts to impeach Joe Biden for some reason. Is this just going to be a setup for the presidential campaign, or do you think they're actually going to try and do some governing?
I don't see a lot of governing. Unfortunately, you didn't see it much in the, they put out this theoretical program, but it wasn't really a program. I think one of the things that hurt him in the elections is they didn't really have a lot of specifics, even on inflation and crime. They're two big issues. Ronald, one of my favorite political jokes is Ronald Reagan's line. He said once that the problem in my administration is that the right hand doesn't know what the far right hand is doing. And I think that's a bit of what Kevin McCarthy's problem is going to be. I'm hoping that perhaps the narrowness of the victory will make a bunch of Republicans say, wait a minute, impeaching Joe Biden is really not a great idea for us. It's not going to help us. It's not going to be popular because while Biden has a negative rating, it may go up a little bit today. By the way, inflation was down. I think this is the best 24 hours Joe Biden has had in a while. I think there may be some second thoughts about that, but the hearings will be terrible. I think that the challenge is to Democrats to put forward some popular, reasonable proposals that are broadly progressive in their effect, but will win a lot of support. For example, the child tax credit, which expired, is about as pro-family a thing as you can imagine, but it also helps alleviate inequality and helps a lot of very struggling middle class and working class and poor families in the country. Childcare is something that has been popular in Republican states. There are actually Republican states that have paid a lot of attention to pre-K and childcare. I think there's some room to put forward some popular progressive ideas, and either they fail, which if the houses are divided, I suspect they will be, but generate a real debate, or maybe some Republicans, Mitt Romney has expressed some interest, for example, in the child credit. Let's see if we can get something going around that.
We're speaking with E.J. Dionne, opinion columnist for the Washington Post. What's the Ron DeSantis effect in all of this? So you read all the stories today, Trump sinking, DeSantis on a very, very fast ascent. He had a great night in Florida 2 nights ago. So to what extent does he now set the agenda?
For those who watch politics with the same joy as they watch the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball, the DeSantis-Trump feud is going to be wonderful to watch. In Massachusetts, the definition of Massachusetts Alzheimer's is you forget everything except your grudges. And I think you're going to see Trump really go after, as he already has. He's labeled him Ron DeSanctimonious. DeSantis in many ways is Trumpism without Trump. I think that's his advantage, but it may also be his disadvantage because it does leave room for some Republican or two who wants to get in and say, I want to break with Trump because it doesn't work for us anymore. But that means breaking some with his style. And I think the interesting choice DeSantis has to make is, does he still run as this culture warrior trying to rally the Trump supporters, or does he try to be something a little bit different going forward? My hunch is he's very locked in on the culture war.
It's going to be interesting to see also, because DeSantis is very smart, which I think is important that we note when we have discussions about him. And I'm wondering if his response to Trump is going to be just to ignore him, because that would be, the more Trump fires at him, the more nicknames he gives him, the more attacks him with. If DeSantis continues to ignore him, that's just going to make Trump's head explode. And then what happens? I mean, we haven't seen that yet, even though it's amazing.
No, I think in the short term, that is the best strategy, and I suspect that's what he'll do. But at some point, if he actually does want to run for president, even if Donald Trump runs for president, there will have to be a moment of confrontation. But I also think that if DeSantis is quiet, the pro-DeSantis, anti-Trump people will not be quiet. So we'll still see a lot of interaction there. But yes, I agree with you. It will make Trump more annoyed if DeSantis just sits back there and tries to build support.
Well, and to what extent is the party the referee here? We're seeing this divide now, and even as we've been talking about Fox News decrying Trump and
the Murdoch empire completely just hanging him out.
Right. Is this the time to walk away? And then do they turn to somebody, to DeSantis? I mean, I guess it's the identity of the party.
I think there is no party referee anymore. I've talked to Republicans over the years who've talked about how party leaders, party organizations have totally lost control of the party to conservative media, both Fox News and the Murdoch media generally, and online and talk radio. I think the rebellion of Fox News would be a huge deal. It's worth bearing in mind that Fox News did not go along with Trump right after the 2020 election. And a lot of Trump's base fled Fox News to some of these more right-wing outlets, and Fox returned home to the Trump camp. So it'll be interesting if they really say, we'll take the risk of losing some of Trump's audience. First time around, they decided they couldn't do that.
EJ, any predictions for us? I mean, I love that it's election season. Like someone tweeted that we should stop saying it's election day. It's election deadline.
It is.
And then it just is election season. So by January, we'll actually know what's happening. But do you have any predictions for the House and the Senate right now, as we've got some information?
Yeah, so I think the big deal is, does Senator Cortez Masto prevail in Nevada? Dave Wasserman, the great political sage, and also John Ralston, who is one of the best students in Nevada politics, said that if you looked at the votes that came out last night, if Cortez Masto can maintain that share of the urban vote, she'll pass Adam Laxalt, take that seat, and the Democrats would have their 50 votes without even winning the Georgia runoff, which is probably, I'd have a little bit of a tilt to Warnock, although I think if Georgia is the deciding vote for control of the Senate, it'd be easier for some Republicans to rationalize voting for Herschel Walker.
Yep.
So I think it actually is important. Democrats have a better chance at 51 if they get to 50 through Nevada. Steve Kornacki, another great analyst, is not quite sure of those ballots yet. So that's the doubtful thing. Mark Kelly, the senator in Arizona, looks pretty good on this early count. I think he is going to make it, but I think in the governor's race is very tight, and Lake could triumph over Hobbs in that, because the Democrats' lead is pretty narrow right now. But the answer is, none of us really knows what's on about 250,000 ballots.
That's true.
And the patterns of who votes when change from election to election.
Well, as the only time I ever quote Donald Trump is, we'll see.
That's okay. You can do that.
All right, EJ Dionne, thanks so much for joining us. Washington
Real
Post.
joy always to be. It's one of my favorite shows on radio anywhere. So thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, EJ, of course, with the Washington Post. He's also a government professor at Georgetown University, a visiting professor at Harvard University. He can't really get a good job, obviously, and a senior fellow of governance at the Brookings Institution. He will be at the JFK Presidential Library tonight, talking about the road to 2024. You can get more information about that and more at jfklibrary.org. And now we're going to take a quick break, opening up the phone lines, talking to you, getting the texts going. What are your thoughts on this red tsunami that was kind of a little light pink trickle, I'm going to say? Is it a referendum on Trump, abortion? Is it the future of the GOP? Stay with us. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 WGBH.
I am Tibisay Sea, host of a new podcast in Spanish about healthcare for Latinos. El COVID persistente puede durar meses e incluso años y puede afectarnos con más de 200 síntomas diferentes. Conoce cómo es vivir con el COVID prolongado y descubre qué dicen los científicos que estudian este fenómeno. Listen this Saturday morning at 9:30 on GBH 89.7 o en tu plataforma de podcast favorita.
Support for our programs comes from you and Ocean State Job Lot, partnering with customers to help veterans in the Northeast by donating winter coats to those in need. More at oceanstatejoblot.com. That's oceanstatejoblot.com. And the Umbrella Arts Center in Concord, presenting Jonathan Larson's Tony and Pulitzer-winning rock musical Rent, November 11th to December 4th. Tickets and information at theumbrellaarts.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, live at the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim and Marjorie are both out today. They'll be back tomorrow, although not here at the library. I'm Jared Bowen, in with Sue O'Connell. For Democrats, there was a fair amount of panic ahead of the midterms, but the so-called red wave mostly failed to materialize, and there's already a lot of finger-pointing going on within the Republican Party. Most of the fingers seem to be aiming right at the former president, Donald Trump. And his head does seem to be exploding, according to at least some CNN accounts today, where he's on a tirade. So we're opening up the phone and text lines to hear from you. Why didn't the red wave materialize, and what does it mean for the next election in 2024? Give us a call or text us at 877-301-8970. Again, that number is 877-301-8970. You can also tweet us at Boss Public Radio. So, Sue, I'm with you, and this isn't a I told you so, I was right moment, but I didn't see it coming either because I kept paying attention to the special elections that happened throughout the summer, and we saw what happened in Minnesota and Nebraska, where people were turning out, where abortion seemed to be a very galvanizing issue, and why were we to believe that would suddenly dissipate in the few months? Granted, that's a long time in politics, just a few months between summer and election day, but it didn't really make sense to me why that would suddenly just go away and there would be this turn. And it's because there is this constant spin that happens, and we do have to lay blame at the media, I think. I wasn't understanding it myself, so it does all translate. But now the question is, what does it mean? But I know you also didn't see this playing out this way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on record as I have a number of dinner bets out there, as well as other bets saying that the Democrats, I did it right like in August. The Democrats were going to hold the Senate, maybe pick up a seat, and they were going to hold the House. I still may be right. That still could happen. There's still pathways for both of those things. But as my accountant likes to tell me, I'm directionally correct. Because of the way the Democrats performed in light of the historic nature of what usually happens in the midterm. And I'm also directionally correct because that's the win I'm going to take, the lap I'm going to take. And I'll tell you what I looked at, Jared. We have a texter who's saying, we're great. That's how you're going to definitely get your text read online.
You mean filling in today? Yes. You're saying that's very kind of you.
I think just in general she means we're great. Jill from Watertown wants to know, she wanted us to ask EJ what the good nonpartisan polling sources are. And One of them is just the places you trust, like Suffolk University, Emerson College, Marist, Washington Post, New York Times, NBC News, and sometimes parties. Both of them do it. It's not one or the other. They will look to get polling that looks better than what's actually happening. So you want to make sure when you're looking at the polls, you look who's paying for it. And the other thing, and everything EJ said, I think I agree with, and what you're saying about people just didn't decide abortion wasn't important, is that the older group of voters are not out protesting or going to rallies or supporting campaigns. They just decided they were going to vote a certain way, and they did. And many of them voted for Democrats on the congressional level because of the challenges that they feel America is facing. And the younger voters, to EJ's point as well, any campaign expert will tell you if you're hanging your hat on the win being younger voters and newly registered voters, you might as well just start crying your liberal tears now because they're not going to show up. However, so many new registrations, so many younger voters saying that they were going to vote this year, that percentage-wise, even if the same percentage of them voted, which might be low, it still was a lot of individual numbers of voters. And I heard reports from a number of Republicans, suburban Republicans, who were saying things like, I can't vote for Herschel Walker. I'm going to go to the poll and I'm going to leave it blank, and I'm just going to take the loss for 2 years, and hopefully we'll get the White House.
Which goes to how I've tried to work my way through this, and it goes back to all the years I covered elections back in my news days, was reading the room, basically. I don't rely on polls very much anymore because we've seen how fallible they are, especially in this age. I think there are many significant challenges to polling because of cell phones and the lack of candor and any number of obstacles. It's not like you can just reach people directly anymore as you could in old days when they would just ring people up or apply some of the older methods, and we've seen it not bear out. Other people are arguing this week that for the first time in a long time, some of the polls may have been right. But yeah, it's just a matter of reading the room, and we see what the temperature of the country is right now and seeing some of these rights go away, and they weren't ready to let that happen. We also know that a majority of the country is moderate, and so those people were turning out to vote. It's not the big left and the big right,
and
super left and super right that get the magnets for media coverage.
Yeah, people who are, and I don't want to discount folks who volunteer for campaigns and go to rallies and vote in primaries, but when you get to the general election, those people aren't walking in saying, I'm going to vote all Republican or all Democrat. They're actually mixing up their vote. So they may vote for a Democrat on the federal level, but a governor might be a Republican. That divide is becoming greater, but it still happens. And, to polling, it's just a snapshot of a certain number of voters at a certain time, right? It's not...
Who are deciding what they want to tell you,
right,
which may not be what they actually feel.
Right, and if you talk to folks in New Hampshire, I hope we get some New Hampshire callers, they stopped answering their phone months ago. If they have a landline, and then you've got young voters. They're not going to, you can't get anybody who is a grandparent or a parent of a young adult and you call them and leave a voicemail, you might as well be yelling into the abyss. They are not going to answer the phone, they're not going to listen to your voicemail, and pollsters are going to have to figure out a better way to reach them.
All right, let's go to the calls. And again, our number is 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. Let's start with Dan in the car. Hi, Dan.
Hi, you stole my thunder, Jared.
Sorry.
I think polls now, no apology necessary. But I think in this day and age, the one thing we've learned in the last 3 elections is polling is useless, at least as it's currently done. It's wildly badly predicted the last 3 elections.
I think it's useful when there's a big difference. Like we knew in Massachusetts what was going to happen, right? That was the results of the elections almost came out exactly as the pollsters called them. But I think when they're tight races, I would agree with you, Dan.
And they're all tight now, except in Massachusetts. I think that political science is going to have to change because it's been very heavily dependent on polling the last bit.
Yeah, Dan, thank you for the call, and I think media is going to have to change too, frankly.
Well, do we need polling?
Exactly.
I mean, that's really the question. Do we need polling? Does anybody who's not strongly, one of the majority of unaffiliated voters in Massachusetts. Do you look at a poll before you go to vote, or who are you going to decide to vote for? I mean, who are the polls for is the question that I always have.
And look at how they use them.
Right.
The GOP was definitely trying to use them, and it didn't bear out.
Let's, Denise in Marlborough on the texting machine says, the red trickle was a result of people tired of Trump, abortion, and to some extent being tired of poor quality candidates. We all want politicians who want to get work done, not just point fingers at the opposing party for being bad or evil. You can text us at 877, you can tweet us at Boss-Public Radio.
It's a lot of what EJ, I think, just said. EJ Dion, there's just an immense fatigue here, and now we see with that how that's bearing out. But fatigue is just going to continue for the next couple of months as we head through election season, as you just called it. All right, next let's go to Carolyn calling from Worcester. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi. I think we always underestimate women. And in this case, we kind of discounted abortion in a lot of instances. I watch a lot of TV, a lot of commentators, and they were always saying, well, abortion is, it's in the rearview mirror. If you're a woman, it isn't in the rearview mirror, even when you're my age. I mean, those are fundamental rights, and I think a lot of people came out and voted that.
At the same time, though, Carolyn, we're seeing some early numbers that are showing that more white women continue to vote Republican, and you can extrapolate that the Republican effort to decrease access to abortion services is part of it. So some women are voting, but they're just not voting in the way that many might think that they would.
We've also seen a lot of men, I think, over the last few months realize the implications of a lack of abortion rights, and it's changed the dynamics in their own families and their own lives. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we will come back in just a moment.
Yeah, we're looking for your thoughts on the red wave that did not wash ashore and what it means for the future of Trump and the Republicans. We're going to keep talking about it till the top of the hour. So you can call or text us at 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming online at youtube.com GBH News.
I'm Marco Werman. The capture of Mariupol, Ukraine, ended with a siege at a steel plant. The Russian military rounded up the last holdouts as prisoners of war. One of those fighters spent 6 months in Russian captivity. Her story, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Boston Ballet, presenting As Anticipated, with 3 contemporary works by celebrated choreographer William Forsythe, including a world premiere. On stage November 3rd to the 13th. Tickets at bostonballet.org. And the British International School of Boston, offering a global learning experience through collaborations with MIT, the Juilliard School, and UNICEF. In-person open house November 20th. Registration at bisboston.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim and Marjorie, as you may have figured out, are out today. They'll be back tomorrow, although back in the studio in Brighton, not here at the library. I'm Jared Bowen, here with Sue O'Connell. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the great red tidal wave many were expecting to see on Tuesday, while Republicans definitely gained some ground, projected to take the House with a thin margin, the Senate still razor thin, and lots of Trump-backed candidates losing. In other words, the showing was a lot milder than Democrats feared it might be. Is this, the referendum on Trumpism in America, a sign that his party is finally ready to move on? Call us or text us at 877-301-8970. Again, that number is 877-301-8970. Sue, I was also thinking about this over the last couple of days, the impact of the congressional hearings from this summer. I think we all went into this wondering if they would have an impact, if people were so entrenched on every side in their beliefs already that they couldn't possibly be swayed. And I think, I haven't seen a lot of conversation about this, but I suspect that this had a lot to do with the election results too, as they wore on, I should say wore on, I think we were all a little fatigued by it. I mean, as they continued and played out like some Hollywood series and got more and more dramatic, and were very much a sucker punch in so many instances when we really saw the horror of that day unfold. I think a lot of people were persuaded.
Yeah, it's really hard to be a moderate, rational Republican and having looked at those hearings and said that, yes, we need more Trump, right? I mean, it really is difficult. And again, we often hear from the passionate people. We don't hear from the moderates who are going about their lives, dropping their kids off at school, going to work. They're not like riveted by the hearings, but and again, it was a one-sided kind of prosecutorial event. There wasn't a defense, but the sheer mountain of evidence that was presented, even if 10% of it is correct, it's a strong indictment. And I think that, as EJ has said, the Republicans are caught between, can we let go of this percentage of Republicans who will vote for us in the primary if we do if we follow Trump's path, to gain the larger opportunity to get moderate people who may not be affiliated as Democrats or Republicans to vote for us. I mean, that's the trick.
All right, let's go back to our callers and start with Mike in the car. Hi, Mike.
Hi, thanks for taking the call. First of all, I was very, very surprised, but also very happy by the results. But the 2 points I wanted to ask you about, one is EJ Dion addressed this briefly, that Fox came back to Trump after January 6th, but I wanted to see what you thought about it, because I feel Republicans in general went back to Trump after January 6th, after a few weeks or months. Kevin McCarthy was originally backing away. Well, now he's back at it with a strong supporter. So I just don't want to overread that. I think Trump's still very much in play, and I wonder what you think. And the second thing I just wanted to comment on is, I'm in Rhode Island. I kind of held my nose and voted for the Democratic governor, McKee, although I'm not comfortable at all with what I see as his cronyism. But I didn't want to vote for the Republican because I didn't want to even give the slightest bit of an opening to Trumpism or a Trump host, so to speak. So I think that's impacting moderates or even the left.
Mike, we're losing you in the car, but I think we got your points. Yeah, I mean, the thing about Trump, he's like a Halloween movie, right? You think it's down, and then suddenly you put all of your weapons down, and it rears up from the kitchen and comes coming after you again, right? And how many times have we said, oh, this is it. That's it for Trump. It's all over, and he's been abandoned by Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy. The only person who has gone forward with a true break is the Cheneys, right? So, yeah, I agree. We don't know that it's over yet, but each time the Republican conservative establishment moves against him, I think it pushes him further back and back and back. And if DeSantis continues to rise, then there's less reason to support Trump.
Well, he's got all the headlines he wants right now. As we know, he was going to plan to announce his run for the presidency next week.
Yeah, he shined up the plane. The plane is all ready to go.
The plane is ready to go, and a lot of people were hearing there were reports saying, no, don't do it now. They definitely didn't want him to do it before the election for fear of what just happened, actually. And yeah, I do not think by any means that we can say that the party has decided to fully move on. But it will be very interesting, as E.J. Dionne said, if you like soap operas, it's going to be fascinating to watch the two headliners, DeSantis and Trump, battle back and forth, because DeSantis essentially is running a campaign now.
And to Mike's point, too, about holding your nose and voting for someone, we tend to hope that the people we're voting for and the candidates mirror and reflect our values 100%. I'm kind of a 60%er. If I'm voting for someone, I hope that, there are some key issues I care about, but then I hope that they are directionally 60% along with me, and I just, take my lumps and vote for them.
So we have Paul from Braintree writing, understand there's a lot of ketchup on the walls at Mar-a-Lago right now. Let's go back to our calls. And Roger, you asked for this, Sue. We have Roger calling from New Hampshire.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, Roger, I want to
to
ask you quickly, Roger, did you stop answering your landline at some point because of all the pollsters calling you?
Well, I got rid of my landline, and my cell phone just shows me spam. But I did answer a few polls from St. A's College, et cetera.
There you go.
Yeah. So this is a great program. This is the first time in probably 2 decades that I have not split my ticket.
Mm-hmm.
And for a variety of reasons, I have voted for down ballot for a couple of Republicans, but this year I just saw the writing on the wall. Their caucus up in Concord is not going in the direction I want to see my state going in many ways. As for the top of the ticket, or at least the congressional race, I want to make sure and make note that the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee made a bet and spent money on behalf of Bulldog during the primary, thinking that a very right-wing candidate would have less of a chance winning against, and would have less of a chance beating Maggie Hassan than a more moderate Republican. And I wanted to know, is that an indictment of electioneering moving forward? What do you think of that bet? Did it work in other states?
Excellent points, Roger. Thanks for that call. What I love about New Hampshire voters, besides the fact that they are high information voters, right? And if you can stop anybody on the street in New Hampshire and ask them any question about what's going on, they will have an answer for you, which I absolutely adore.
It's why the First in the Nation primary is so successful there, because the candidates know it's not just enough to have somebody come through your town. They want to meet and have a conversation with you.
And they also makes it very hard to predict what's going to happen in tight elections, right? Because the Republicans aren't always going to vote as, like he said, sometimes they split the ticket quite often. And what Roger's referring to is that the Democratic National Committee put money into negative ad campaigns against the moderate Republicans who were running. So, Bolduc had a contender who was moderate, and they put ads in attacking him so that Bolduc looked better to Republican conservatives. And it paid off in New Hampshire. I actually don't have the data in front of me, Roger, about the other races. I would say, this is where I get conflicted. I don't think it's good for democracy for parties to be running. I think negative ads are bad. I think running negative ads to kind of engineer how the vote will happen is bad. Gerrymandering is bad. But the Democrats continually get caught flat-footed because they don't do the things that the Republicans do, right? The entire nation has been gerrymandered in the Republicans' image. So if the Democrats wanted to pay a few bucks to run some ads to try and take a risk, which paid off in New Hampshire, I say go for it.
Going back to polling for a moment, we have a texter, Carol, is writing, maybe the polls were right, and because of them, the Dems are motivated to get out and vote and change the trajectory. Why isn't anyone saying this? Well, Carol, you just have. And I think that is part of the strategy behind polls now, is they're definitely used for a certain agenda. They're definitely used by media to have a newscast.
Well, it's more interesting for us to cover the horse race issue of it. Who's pulling ahead, what's happening, what's going on, rather than digging into some of the issues. And that's basically because that's what the audience responds to, right? So it's incumbent upon, again, primary voters, also high information voters, but generally they're picking their team. If you're going to vote in a general election, it's incumbent upon you to try and find out what's really happening. And do you care about polls? I'd love to know if it's going to really impact how you vote.
All right, next up on the line is Hank calling from Marlborough. Hi, Hank.
Hey, how you doing today?
Great.
I got a comment and an observation I'd like to bounce off. First of all, I'd like to put a plug for the Maggie Hassan and Tim Ryan. Tim Ryan, very gracious in defeat and making a plug for the importance of accepting a loss. And also Maggie Hassan being so gracious in victory. And what a wonderful way to close.
You know, Hank, hey, Hank, I'm sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you. You're breaking up on us. Can you call us right back, or can you text us? Oh, actually, be on hold. Go on hold. Oh, we hung up. I'm sorry. It's my first day here. I don't know what I'm doing. Hank, call us right back, and we'll try and get to you. Hank's issue about how the candidates responded, I do think, it's like one of those low bar issues. A number of candidates accepted the results when they lost.
Right.
Didn't immediately, some didn't, but the majority of candidates who lost, who you thought might have challenged the election, went right into, let's move on, let's help the person govern. Jeff Deal, his campaign manager came out early and was upset that AP, Associated Press, had called the race at 8:02. I had bet people it would be called at 8:01, but I'm still collecting on that debt too.
You were wrong.
I was wrong by a minute. But then Jeff Deal came out and said, let's accept it and move on. So I think that's an important note. So we'll wait for him to call us back.
All right, we have a texter saying, as much as I cannot stand Trump and would love to see him go away, I think DeSantis is much more scary because he could actually get his hate pushed through because he knows the system.
Yeah, definitely. DeSantis is a smart, very intelligent planner who knows how to get things done. And he's also a very good campaigner. We're finishing this campaign season. Being a candidate, being governing are two totally different things. So it depends on how you go. But I'm wondering if DeSantis runs, who his running mate would be. Could it be Marco Rubio? Could we have a full-on Florida man campaign? What about we talking about Mike?
I don't think that's not going to happen.
What about Mike Pence? We haven't talked about Mike Pence this hour yet, or Nikki Haley, or Cheney. What's up with these tickets?
They're waiting for the first theater to play out. They're waiting for Act 1 to be finished before they climb onto the stage.
Pence had to get his guest opinion in yesterday because he was feeling left out of the stuff. Okay, Hank is back. Hank, we heard some nice things you were saying about Maggie Hassan. Okay. What else is on your mind? Oh, Hank isn't back yet. Hank is back. Hank, you're back?
Hi, how you doing today?
Great.
The other thing I'd like to make an observation about you, it was something that was alluded to earlier. It's generally speaking, when people make decisions, it's not, there are single-issue voters like gun voters, but a lot of times people are making decisions on a variety of issues. For example, let's take a look at a woman's right to choose. How much of that is an economic issue as well as a right to choose issue? And one thing that polling cannot do and doesn't do is take a look at a constellation of factors whereby people might go one way or another. Take for example, the most recent millionaire's tax. There were good arguments on both sides. And I thought the Globe did a great job of weighing both sides of the question before they actually went in favor of it. So what's your thinking on any kind of way of looking at a constellation of issues that fundamentally facilitate a decision one way or another?
Got it, Hank. Thanks so much for calling back as well. I had a lot of arguments with people about how access to abortion care is an economic issue, right? Because if you are forced to give birth, you have to leave the workforce, or caring for a child, the expense of caring for a child that you weren't planning for could take you out of the workforce. There's a number of intertwined issues. I got really upset, and I still do, with people, even on Twitter, who say things like, well, you can't be voting for abortion rights and access when the inflation is so high, when fuel prices are so high. And I listened to a number of people in New Hampshire especially who said, no, I'm thinking about this. I'm not just saying I'm voting for abortion access or I want to support the rollback of Roe v. Wade. I understand how this is all interconnected, and I also understand what federal government can and cannot do for me. So good points. I think the moderate people, they think a lot about things, and that's where I think we need to try to head to.
All right, well, it's a great conversation. Thank you to everybody who called and texted today, this morning.
Okay, we'll be back in a little bit with, after a quick break, with former Suffolk County Sheriff Andrea Cabral, she's going to bring us the news of the day. We're going to talk about some election results and also what's going on with former Suffolk County DA Rachel Rollins. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming online at youtube.com GBH News. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com. Examine the connections of drug abuse, systemic racism, and the escalation of women's incarceration in the United States in a new documentary, Breaking Good, Women and the War on Drugs. Tonight at 10 on GBH2.
Trusted, local news. This is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
I'm Jared Bowen in for Marjorie Egan. Ahead on Boston Public Radio, live from the BPL. Comics Come Home, the longest-running comedy fundraiser in the country, is back for its 26th annual benefit this Sunday. Comedian Lenny Clark is performing, and he'll join us here at the library. And tech writer Andy Anatko reviews all the latest drama and all things Twitter with Elon Musk.
I'm Sue O'Connell in for Jim Browdy. It's not Friday, but BPR, we're right here at the library. So we're going to bring you some live music today. The New England Conservatory is hosting a free 6-day festival celebrating 50 years of their contemporary music department. We'll hear from Hank Isnetsky and Eden Macadam-Somer. They're going to treat us to a song or two. And then we'll open the lines and hear about the family traditions that you grew up with and absolutely hated. That's ahead on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Big gains on Wall Street this hour. The Dow's risen more than 1,000 points, up 3%. S&P up 4.7%. And the Nasdaq now up more than 6%, all fueling hope the Fed may scale down future rate hikes. Inflation moderated slightly more than Wall Street expected, according to the latest government data. NPR's David Gura has more.
Wall Street economists had expected an increase of 7.9%. Core inflation, which doesn't include food and energy prices, was also lower than forecasted at 6.3%. In October, oil prices went up, and so did the price of gasoline. Meat and eggs were more expensive, along with baked goods. Rent continued to be a huge driver of high inflation. It saw the largest monthly increase in more than 3 decades. But used car prices have started to moderate, and so has the price of clothing. The Federal Reserve is trying to bring high inflation under control. Earlier this month, it once again raised interest rates by 75 percentage points. Wall Street expects another hike of 50 percentage points at the Fed's next meeting. David Gura, NPR News, New York.
The CPI for October was up 7.7%. President Biden heading to some major meetings in North Africa and Asia with momentum following the midterm elections. Here's NPR's Franco Ordonez.
While U.S. voters don't weigh in on foreign policy issues, world leaders do pay close attention to U.S. elections. Ivo Dalder, who served as a U.S. ambassador to NATO in the Obama administration, says there's no doubt that the better-than-expected results for Democrats in the midterms will help Biden when he meets with leaders, including his Chinese counterpart.
He will be able to come there not, as many expected a few days ago, as someone who had been weakened by the elections, but he'll come there as someone who has been strengthened.
Biden is going to meet with many leaders at the UN Climate Summit in Egypt, then in Cambodia, and finally in Bali with the G20. Franco Ordonez, NPR News.
For the second time in less than 2 months, hundreds of thousands of people are enduring a power outage because of a hurricane. Tropical storm Nicole made landfall overnight as a Category 1 hurricane near Vero Beach in Florida on the state's Atlantic coast. Here's NPR's Greg Allen.
Nicole came ashore with 75-mile-per-hour winds, causing power outages to counties along Florida's central Atlantic coast. The storm is expected to continue to weaken and cross the peninsula before taking a turn north, moving through Georgia today and tomorrow. Because it hit near a full moon, tides were especially high. A storm surge as high as 4 or 5 feet was predicted for hundreds of miles of coastline from Florida to South Carolina. Before the hurricane hit, roads were already flooding and heavy surf was causing significant beach damage. In Daytona Beach shores, police ordered the evacuation of several beachfront condominium buildings out of concerns for their stability. Greg Allen, NPR News, Port St. Lucie, Florida.
The Dow is now up 982 points, more than 3%. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in Brookline today. When Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg announced laying off a third of the company's workforce, inquiring minds began wondering how and what would affect Meta's presence at 50 Binney Street in Kendall Square, Cambridge. Still unclear how many employees lost their jobs at that local office, which prior to this week's layoffs employed about 500 people. A spokesperson for the company says that the people working there were mostly engineers and technologists. Meta also has an office at 1 Broadway in Cambridge. No word yet on any layoffs there as well. There's been another deadly shooting in broad daylight in Boston. Happened near Harvard and Paxton Streets in Mattapan yesterday afternoon. Victim was in his 30s. His name has not yet been released. Suffolk County District Attorney Kevin Hayden is asking anyone with information about the shooting to come forward as police continue to look for suspects.
We need community support, and we've gotten community support. We're thankful for the members of the community that step forward and provide the information. We always need that in these investigations. We can't do this alone.
The shooting comes 3 days after a spate of violence in the city that left 6 people shot. One of them was killed. In sports, the Bruins host Calgary at the Garden tonight. The Bees have won 8 of their last 10 games. Go Bees. Thursday night football, Falcons are at the Panthers. And we are in for another sunny and beautiful fall day today. Mid-60s, clouds and upper 40s overnight. And then rain from Nicole arrives tomorrow, Veterans Day, and hangs around into Saturday. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Wallace Foundation, working to develop and share practices that can improve learning and enrichment for young people and the vitality of the arts for everyone. Ideas and information at wallacefoundation.org.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, live at the Boston Public Library. Come visit us, or you can stream us at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim and Marjorie are both out today. They'll be back tomorrow. However, back in the studio in Brighton, not here at the library. I'm Jared Bowen, hosting along with Sue O'Connell. Hi again, Sue.
Hi, it's good to be here.
You stayed. You didn't leave.
I didn't leave. I couldn't get out, so I decided to stay.
That's very, very generous of you. Well, we're joined now via Zoom by Andrea Cabral. Andrea is a former Sheriff of Suffolk County, former Secretary of Public Safety in the Commonwealth. Hi, Andrea.
Hey, Jared. How are you? Hello, Sue.
Hi, Andrea. How are you?
Good.
So were you surprised? Were you one of the folks who said, no, it's not going to be a red wave and folks are going to continue to be engaged even though, gee, it seems like rights were rolled back a whole few months ago? Were you surprised, or is this what you expected to happen?
I was cautiously optimistic. I thought that the polling, especially the parts of the polling that were basically rigged by GOP pollsters, these sort of unreliable polls, a spate of which came out close in time to the election, saying that Republicans were gaining momentum. I didn't place any faith in those, and I thought that the polls all along, regardless of who was doing them, were undercounting grossly the vote by women, the response of women to the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And I also thought that they were absolutely undercounting young adult engagement and the young adult vote, because it's pretty clear to me that, Gen Z is well aware that if the planet is going to function for them, they're going to have to make it so, because the generations that are older than they are not going to leave this world a better place for them. And I think that they grossly underestimated that level of engagement by both of those groups.
And we're only months into a lot of the country grappling with their new restrictions around abortion rights. We saw what happened in Kansas. We've now seen this week what happened in Kentucky, where they preserved those rights. But since this is still being meted out, how central is the issue of abortion going forward and dictating where this country is headed?
Oh, I think it's critical. I absolutely think that it is critical. I think that, people who believed that Roe would always be considered settled law, that a certain amount of complacency arose around that I remember when we were campaigning for Hillary Clinton and saying, as we're door knocking and saying to people on the phones, this is about the Supreme Court. We would get a response, and often it would be from even younger women that, that's not really an issue. That's not really a basis on which I should be making my decision to vote. And, we would be saying, well, we're a little older than you, and history tells us that nothing is set in stone, and did actually come to pass. So I think it was a major wake-up call for people. But I also think that along with the abortion issue, and the right of, we call it the abortion issue because that's the way it's framed by the other side, but it's really a right of reproductive access and medical care and freedom over, to control one's own body without having government interference in that. Along with that, we should never forget when we talk about the groups that sort of make it happen, that, non-white voters are voting in record numbers because they can see and have been able to see for, the last 5 or 10 years, exactly where this country is headed in terms of the stripping away of rights and the spikes in hate crimes. So it's really a combination of groups that sort of made this happen, but we need to keep an eye on what all of that means in terms of where the voters who aren't voting that way are going and what they're doing with their time and their political power.
Andrew, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the Election Day conspiracies. I think the Washington Post reported how many election deniers, all of them Republican, were on the ballot across the country, both on the state level and on the congressional and governor's level. And, we're not done counting. I say we, United States is not done counting. And these poll workers, who we all know poll workers, if we vote regularly, how dedicated they are to the democratic process and how under siege they have been, and the election day barely closed and there were already conspiracy theories out there. How should people respond when they see these theories, and what should government officials be doing about them?
Well, I think that there all along there should have been probably a more unified and a harder, louder chorus of, government at the state, local, federal level pushing back on this nonsense. And I think that there was a scramble, particularly after the January 6th insurrection. There was sort of a scramble to sort of wrap our heads around the depth and the breadth of both the actual conspiracy to overturn the election and its many moving parts. And so I think that, government might have been caught a little flat-footed in terms of responding to this. But I also think that social media is one of the things that amplifies these conspiracy theories, and conspiracists have been very effective in, getting that information out there. That's why they say, lie travels halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on.
And so, Andrew, sorry to interrupt, but do you see that there was a course correction with this last election cycle? I think a lot of people were surprised that there weren't more of these headlines. It's not to say that it didn't exist whatsoever, people claiming that elections were rigged or there were problems with election machines. We did see that in Arizona, but it wasn't a thunderous account.
Right, and I think, first of all, there have always been issues on Election Day with voting machines. It's not like this is a new thing. What's new is sort of saying that is a part of a conspiracy to make the election unreliable. And I do think that the message did come together close in time to Election Day, and it did permeate because a lot of the polls did talk about people believing that the threat to democracy was real. And I think the January 6th hearings helped that immensely. I think people were really jarred awake as to exactly how serious this attempt to overthrow the election was. So, 14 of these sort of Trump handpicked candidates lost, which is very, very significant. That's not to say that he weighed in on all of the local, MAGA sort of conspiracy theorists who are running at the local level for Secretary of State positions, Board of Election positions. Those might not have been necessarily among his handpicked candidates. But I think that I am hopeful that it is a trend away from this absolute insanity because it is a lethal threat to democracy.
As someone who's, my mom worked polls back in Revere, there's always a problem. It doesn't mean that there's a major conspiracy happening. I mean, I saw someone on Twitter was joking about how in Pennsylvania they ran out of paper ballots, and that's the home of Dunder Mifflin from The Office, right? The major paper company sitcom. You think that would be, handled, but it's okay. It worked out all right.
That was so long ago now. So we're talking to Andrea Cabral. Big shift with the seat of Sheriff Thomas Hodgson, who after decades, as 25 years as sheriff of Bristol County, he's out. And the mayor of Attleboro, Paul Heroux, is in. What's the significance of this? And did you expect to see that he would be voted out of office?
I did, in part because the sheriffs hold office for 6 years. And when they are on the ballot, they're down ballot races. It's easy to forget that. I think the sheriff, I remember a couple of elections where I think the sheriff's race was either the second to last or literally the last thing on the ballot. And when you have a lot of ballot questions, that can also be challenging for people to get, all the way through it. And I think there are some built-in benefits to an incumbent with a term of office that's that long and a race that's as down ballot as the sheriff is.
And let me just jump in here and point out for people, I'm just assuming people may know who he is, but he was very tight with President Trump, known for chain gangs and taking a very, very strict approach to incarceration. So let me just give the context
and a number
there.
of lawsuits,
Right.
a number of lawsuits regarding how he treated folks who were in his care.
Well, yeah, a very regressive approach to corrections at a time when sheriffs were moving toward embracing programming and reentry and lowering recidivism, spending resources, even sending deputy sheriffs to the border in southern states to work with ICE as though immigration was a big problem. There were several sheriffs, I was one of them, that at some point housed ICE detainees, but there were lots and lots of complaints about the treatment of inmates and pretrial detainees generally and the treatment of ICE detainees in his jails. There were a number of, suffice to say, there were a number of problems, but he continued to be reelected, and that, it's whatever voters turn out, you have to respect the will of the voters. Paul Heroux, I think, was a different kind of challenger because he was well known. He was the mayor of Attleboro. He had resources. He had built a reputation. I don't know that any of the people, I think there was a state rep or two that had run against Hodgson in the past, and I think there were a few times he was obviously unopposed. But Paul Heroux had different kinds of resources to bring to bear to this race, and he wasn't an unknown quantity in Bristol County. And I think he ran a very effective campaign. And, in an election year or midterm year where the turnout was pretty significant, that was going to benefit the Democratic challenger.
It's also, I think, worth saying, Andrea, that it's hard to get voters to care about folks who are incarcerated. I wish we were better at that as a society. So, part of all the issues that you have pointed out rightly regarding his reelection, Hodgson's reelection, it also is there a passion to make the changes in reform that were not happening around his job and the folks in his care.
That's an excellent point, and it is. It's very true. We used to say all the time that inmates and detainees, pretrial detainees, don't have they're not a constituency for anyone. So it's not like there's ever sort of a community-based pushback against what happens there. As far as most people are concerned, if you're convicted of a crime, then you must have done something wrong, and you get whatever is coming to you. And so it does make it a lot easier to fly under that radar in terms of the way people are treated in your institution.
So, Andrea Carell, let's ask about U.S. Attorney Rachel Rollins, who it's being reported now, the AP has reported that she's under investigation for ethics violations, essentially, on a couple of different fronts. One, that she, as U.S. Attorney, attended a Democratic National Committee event in Andover this summer, which was built around a meet and greet with First Lady Jill Biden. They're also investigating to what extent she has used her personal cell phone for official business, and apparently they're also looking at a trip that she took to California in June that was built around CAA, which is actually the big Hollywood agency that represents movie stars and singers and whatnot. What are we to make of this? No details have been confirmed because the Department of Justice doesn't confirm those details, but we're learning about this now.
Right, and I think, clearly, obviously the details of the investigation, like the details of nearly every federal investigation, were leaked to the AP, and they went with the story, as is usually the case. I think in terms of the Inspector General is the watchdog for the Department of Justice. The Inspector General's investigation was essentially confirmed by the U.S. Attorney's Office because they issued a statement that said that they were fully cooperating with the investigation. So we can be certain that there is, in fact, an investigation ongoing because that's been confirmed. And so what you have here is, in terms of the attending the campaign event with Dr. Jill Biden, that is a potential violation of the Hatch Act, which prohibits campaign activity prohibits federal officials in their official capacity from participating in campaign or political activities. And so it was reported, I think, when she went to the event in July, that that might potentially be a problem. And also, the fact that Merrick Garland came out in August with a reminder to everyone in the DOJ about not participating in activities, which sort of indicates to me that there may have been other incidences, the U.S. Attorney's offices in other places. That sort of also highlighted it. And what all of this means is, the DOJ investigation, along with the Office of Special Counsel looking into what's in the story says, the use of a private cell phone for official business, and the California trip, is you have to be above reproach when you're in an office like the U.S. Attorney's Office, and you have to be really, really careful all the time. And there's never a time when you cannot be unvigilant about what someone could potentially report to an ethics commission, report to a watchdog, or something like that, because that will happen. And it will often happen inside of your own office. I mean, the one thing people should not forget is the DOJ as an it can't be stated strongly enough that the DOJ is an institution. The attorneys who work there cannot be fired by the U.S. attorney. Unlike in the DA's office, they're all at-will employees and people come and go. The U.S. attorney can pick their bureau chiefs and their division chiefs, but they cannot fire rank and file. That has to be done by the DOJ for a cause, and that's to create this institutionalism where people are focused on doing the job. So if someone sees you doing something anywhere in that organization that they think isn't great, they can report you. And in Rachel's, Rachel Rollins' case in particular, Tom Cotton had already made her a target during her confirmation, and so she would have known that the GOP was basically looking to, identify or create issues for her. So you really do have to be very, very, very careful all the time with all of this kind of stuff.
Andrew, I just want to ask you a sort of personal experience question, because your voice echoes in my head at least every other day when I'm about to text something.
You poor thing.
I'm about to text somebody something, and I hear your voice say, "Don't text something you wouldn't want read in open court." And I say, "Call me." And I have two phones. I have a work phone. I have a personal phone. I've got a number. I've got a work computer. I've got a personal computer, and I'm a mess. I'm just emailing everybody from the wrong phone and texting the wrong things. As a former elected official and government official and someone who campaigned, you ran for sheriff, how hard is it to manage, this life of having a completely separate campaign, a completely separate personal life, and then your job as a government official with records laws that say we can see anything that you do?
It is incredibly difficult because you're really busy. You're doing stuff, on the fly. You're responding to things sort of immediately, and you're not always aware of what device you're using because you have so many of them. It is particularly difficult for elected officials, which is not necessarily the case with the U.S. attorney, but elected officials, because you do have a whole separate campaign apparatus. And so, it's not that it's not difficult, because it really is difficult. It's difficult just for busy people who are not elected officials, who are, trying to manage using devices that are owned either by their company or by them personally, or some other thing that they do, as a side hustle. It's really, it's difficult. And it's not that when you run afoul of something like that, or you run into a problem, that you can't simply say, I made a mistake. Because people certainly have done that.
Well, I'm listening to this, and I'm thinking your Department of Justice, you can't afford the notion, any perception whatsoever of impropriety, and going into the job that this is a job you take care. Again, we don't know the results of the investigation. We should point out that she had tweeted, especially after the Jill Biden event, that she got permission to do that. That's what she tweeted. It's not a direct response to this current investigation.
Yeah, I understand that, because we live in a social media world, but I do think it's a little bit still different from being the DA. I think if you're the U.S. attorney, it doesn't. You cannot. You don't have to be elected, right? So you're not worried about whether or not voters are perceiving some misinformation about you. I don't know that you necessarily respond to a Herald article on social media and defend yourself there. I think you defend yourself with the DOJ, should it come to that, with the Inspector General or with the Office of Special Counsel. But I think that those are some of the differences. And people do, they find their way. But it's something that I can remember when I was sheriff. I basically never did anything, went anywhere, asked for any sort of reimbursement. And this is as I'm watching fellow sheriffs take advantage of all of the things that sort of come their way. But I knew that there was always a target on my back.
No, it's true.
I was in Suffolk County, and I knew that what was going to be written about me, it didn't matter if there were millions of other people doing the exact same thing. It simply would not matter. I would be identified, and I would be singled out.
Yeah, on a regular basis, I'm splitting the tab, with folks as a journalist as well. I mean, I think sometimes folks don't understand, what's the big deal if somebody buys me a cup of coffee or I buy somebody a cup of coffee. But the great late Sonny Joe White from KISS 108, I'm gonna quote another voice that's in my head, Andrea Cabral. Don't end up on the front page of the Herald. That was always something that I tried to avoid.
At least for something bad.
Yeah, right. All right.
Rarely is it going to be for something good, but not for something bad.
All right, Andrea Cabral, thanks so much for joining us. Great to chat with you. Hope to see you in person soon.
Excellent to chat with you both. I hope you're both well.
Thank you. Andrea, of course, is the former sheriff of Suffolk County and the former secretary of public safety in the Commonwealth. We're going to take a quick break. The FCC is attempting to rein in the amount of space junk floating in the atmosphere with a new space bureau. And oh my gosh, we're 2 weeks into the reign of Elon. I'm calling it, I'll tell you what I'm calling it later. He's taken over Twitter and the dust is still up in the air, but not in space, although it might be. We'll find out. We're talking about that and the latest with our tech guru, Andy Anako. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
From the GBH Newsroom, Priced Out, the fight for housing in Massachusetts. The problems...
Housing crisis has driven up prices to record levels.
Where one-bedrooms go for $3,000 a month.
The solutions.
Biden administration is looking at the idea that factory-made housing can produce homes faster, can produce them cheaper, and they can be used for multifamily homes.
You can hear the entire series right now at gbhnews.org/priced out.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Ocean State Job Lot, partnering with customers to help veterans in the Northeast by donating winter coats to those in need. More at oceanstatejoblot.com. That's oceanstatejoblot.com. And Heights Crossing, an assisted living community offering residents experiences aimed at promoting independence, inspiring curiosity, and encouraging connection with others. More at heightscrossing.com/enrich.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim and Marjorie are out. They'll be back tomorrow, though, although they'll be at our studio in Brighton and not here at the Boston Public Library. We're joined now in person by Andy Anako. He's a tech writer and blogger. You can follow him on Twitter at Inako. I can't even say it anymore.
I know.
The
words turn to brass in your mouth, don't they?
It's what it does to us. Hi, Andy. So you're also here to push my buttons. We won't do this right away. That's a tease. But yeah, I have a feeling you and I are going to get into it again. But I guess we'll start with Twitter, right, Sue?
Yeah, Andy, look at... we're not going to talk about the deal, the Elon Musk, let me buy something at the highest price possible, possibly ruining all of my other companies and wasting some money while the rest of the category is closing down a bit. We're not going to talk about that. Why is Elon Musk ruining my Twitter? Okay, and how is Elon Musk ruining my Twitter? It's been 2 weeks, and every day, I'm very passionate about this, as you can tell. Every day I go on Twitter, it's an entirely different thing.
Yeah.
All right? One day I get on, I have like 15 posts from Barstool Sports. I follow Barstool Sports. I've never interacted with Barstool Sports. Why do they think I want to see 122 posts from Barstool Sports? But then it went away. I have a blue check. Will I still have a blue check? What's happening, Andy?
Oh my goodness, your guess is as good as mine. I am telling you the absolute truth here. During the it takes me about 3 or 4 hours to put together topics we're going to be talking about today and writing things up. During that 4 hours, just during those 4 hours, news changed and shifted. As I was getting ready to go on right now, a really big piece of news dropped. Elon Musk fired the CEO, fired a lot of the C-suite executives. A lot of the top executives, the most important brain trust behind Twitter, have also decided to simply resign because they don't want to work for Elon Musk. And add to that list of really critical people, the chief privacy officer, basically the chief executives that are in charge of privacy and security and compliance with government regulations and government directives. That just came out from the Washington Post about an hour and a half ago. All these executives basically said, look, I can't explain exactly the reasons why, but I don't want to work for that person. I'm resigning. And the FCC immediately had a spokesperson say, we are very concerned about all this. because, again, it is a chaotic situation, and the FCC wants to remind Twitter that, look, you are under compliance directives. They've been creating all kinds of different features over the past week and a half. We can talk more about that. But they are required to do a really intense audit of what are the risks to security and privacy. And if they fail to do that, I don't care that there's a new name on the pink slip, the FCC is saying we can regulate you and we can punish you for not doing due diligence.
And this is important for a number, folks who aren't on Twitter may not understand the importance of some things that you're talking about here. One is I'm verified and they have my government issued ID.
Yeah.
In order for me to get verified, I had to submit to them years ago a copy of my passport or my Massachusetts license. So they have everyone who has a blue check, the old blue check before Elon, they have a copy of their government ID. They have, in some instances, money. Right? Some people have tip jars on their Twitter accounts. So there's money processing, finance processing that goes on. So I imagine they have people's banking information. If you just recently bought a blue check, they now have your credit card information. Obviously, they have all your DMs and all of your Twitter history, but we know that we had no chance of keeping that private. So there are some serious concerns here.
Yeah, again, particularly because I keep coming back to the word chaos. For the past week, I've been thinking about that John Mulaney routine about how there's a horse running loose in the hospital. And because we don't know why Elon Musk bought it in the first place, he seriously overpaid for it. He says it, and analysts agree for it. He took himself into considerable debt to do it. He sold another big chunk of Tesla stock to fund it and sent the stock price of Tesla down 7 points in doing it. Let's go through a timeline of the blue check mark where it used to be a simple thing under Twitter where somebody who has what's known as who is active and notable and an authentic personality.
That's me.
Yeah. So I was an early user of Twitter. I just got an email from the service. Hey, we want to give you a verified account. Okay, great. Prove who you are. Great. Here's again. I edited out some stuff on my driver's license because they don't need it. But smart. Great. So they know that. So they know that it's not God forbid anybody would want to pretend to be me on Twitter. But your bank should be verified. Public figures should be verified. And that was the role of the blue check mark. But Elon Musk was promising, oh gosh, that's not good. That's for the public. That's an elitist thing. So we're going to charge you. We're going to make it available to everybody who wants one. Just give us $20 a month. And then almost immediately said, actually no, $8 a month. And then he said, oh, but we're still going to have a verification process. Those are going to be a special gray checkbox. And then he said almost immediately, actually, I just killed that. That's not going to be the case. He said that people like you and me who already had the blue check mark, well, you're going to lose it unless you start paying money. And then he reversed that. And I can keep going
2
on
weeks.
and on.
It's been 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, he could go on and on.
Okay, so I'll finally tread in here. Why do we care about this? I legitimately ask about this. I had a blue check mark at one point because I'm somewhat of a public figure, and then it went away. I hadn't even noticed. Do I really care that I'm legitimized by Twitter? Absolutely not. And I didn't think that the majority of people were really focusing on Twitter or using it anymore anyway in any significant means. Am I completely wrong in that?
I don't think you're right. I won't say you're wrong. I'll say I don't think you're right.
Set you up for the next segment.
Exactly. But number one, this is part of what makes Twitter work. People use Twitter because they want to know authentically that someone that they follow, someone that they're interested in as a news source, be they celebrity, be they a corporate account, be they whatever, is the real deal. And the fact that they fumbled this so completely. So the blue checkmark program went live yesterday, and people who are either A, funsters or B, fraudsters realize that, hey, if I pay $8, I can get the magical blue check mark. And because this was done so quickly, the user interface people didn't give it a different blue check mark or a different indication. It looks just like every verified blue check mark. So people would create a fake Nintendo account, a fake LeBron James account, because at the time, Twitter would also let you have your username, but you can change like your public facing name to something fun or whatever. And so people would sign up under their real name, but then say, oh, my name is the real LeBron James basketball, and then I get the blue check mark, and now they're tweeting, hey, I refuse to work with this team anymore. I want to be traded, causing lots of consternation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean small level, I was telling Jared earlier, there's somebody who's tweeting directly, because Elon apparently has plenty of time, because he's on Twitter all the time. And people are saying, hey, I changed my Twitter handle to Halloween is great, and now I can't change it back. I don't want to be Halloween is great for the rest of my life. I did it before you bought Twitter. Please help me. And he's like, sure, we're on it.
But it still has the resonance it always had. I guess I'm asking my question a different way. Is I thought that people had kind of moved on to other things or didn't have the weight, but it also made me wonder, the question you also just posed, why is he so hell-bent on having Twitter, and why would he spend so much money to have this? What is... Well, you said you can't answer this. Nobody can answer this.
There's some speculation, and some of it is kind of worrying. Just to put a button on that conversation, though, it's not just the idea of the blue check mark. It's an indication that he paid $44 billion for a company that, let's face it, has been losing hundreds of millions of dollars a year and overpaid for this failing company. And you would think that almost anybody else, richest man in the world, he's got to know something. I mean, if he's going to put himself into that much debt, he must have a plan. This deal has been in the works since springtime. This looks like he just finally realized that the check cleared and is starting to make up stuff off the top of his head. Blue check marks are just one thing, but things like policing hate speech, policing interference with elections, policing things like that. Does he care about that? He immediately
the hate speech has gone through the roof, hasn't it?
Exactly, and because he immediately fired half of the workforce, and they found out just because they started to try to log into email and they suddenly couldn't anymore. That's how efficient that went. Then he learned that, we accidentally fired a whole bunch of people who keep Twitter running. We're going to have to hire them back. But by the way, we're going to tell you that these features that normally would take Twitter months and months and months to develop code, verify, and secure, you have 1 week to do it. We're expecting you to do 24-hour, 7 days a week shifts.
I just want to say I've made a number of really bad business decisions over my lifetime, and now I feel like a genius.
Well, I'm just hoping. So I have mentioned this before. I'm the moderator of the Boston Speaker Series. Last year, we had Walter Isaacson, who is writing a biography on Elon Musk. He told me that he's going down there at that point anyway last year. I hope this is still the case. To answer both of your questions and mine, I guess, he was meeting with him weekly in Texas.
Wow.
And so I hope that he's still working on that biography and might be able to get some of these answers.
He's not a man who shuts up. So maybe, and Isaacson, he wrote the Steve Jobs biography. He wrote critical biographies of Thomas Edison, which is why Steve Jobs handpicked him to it. So that could be a very interesting book. I'll just say that Twitter is such an important engine for disinformation, for controlling government speech, for controlling dissident information. If this thing starts to collapse, this becomes a very big problem for a lot of people who maybe tweeted something about the Chinese government, the Russian government, the Iranian government 3 years ago, and now because Elon Musk owns Tesla and wants to have leverage with China, saying, hey, please let me build more Tesla factories in China. Hey, you were kind of upset about all of that anti-Hong Kong stuff. What if we hand over to you, we're just complying with your local laws, of course, our hands are clean, but we'll hand over the identities of the people who did that under private accounts. Those are the sort of things we're worried about. And so, as I said, the horse is loose in the hospital. We don't know what's going to happen.
We haven't even got...
I was going to say, not to mention a texter who's pointing out that some of his money for buying Twitter may have come from the Saudis. That's
interesting. It's about $7 billion, I think, came from private investment, including Larry Ellison, the head of Oracle, who is one of the legendary tech founders and investors. The other one is an individual with an interesting background. It's not the Saudi government. It's an individual who is a very, very prominent Saudi investor. And the more I tried to dig into over the past couple of months, because his name keeps coming up, it's possible that he just is a big tech investor, and that's very, very possible. The Saudis are very, very big tech investors. They already had big holdings in Twitter. Vanity Fair put together the argument that he's actually a front for the Saudi government. So we don't know about that. And I have to be aware that there's going to be a lot of prejudice and bigotry that says, Saudi Arabia, this must stink and reek of terrible things. But once again, in a field in which we are walking across a vat of Ovaltine trying to escape a fire, we don't know where we can put down a solid footing.
Well, I would say the same about artificial intelligence and art. And here we
Bam!
go. So this is
Bam!
This is round 2 of a conversation, a spirited conversation that you and I had. A respectful PBSE, NPRE conversation that we had this summer about the role of artificial intelligence in art. I will recap that conversation where I thought that it's very profoundly disturbing to me, actually, how artificial intelligence is being used in art, and we'll get into the reasons why. And I'll let you say how you feel about it and why we're talking about it again.
Well, I think it's very, very exciting. The general term for this kind of thing is generative AI. And that's where, realize that anytime you're intimidated by the magic of artificial intelligence, it almost always comes down to a simple thing. Giving an AI system billions of examples of a thing, and then asking it to identify patterns that exist in that big data set, then asking it to please repeat and synthesize that pattern or continue the pattern you've seen before. So that's why, for instance, Google has a generative AI that if you were to hum like just 2 bars of just da 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 da, it could then turn that into like 2 pages of sheet music, basically by continuing that melodic line and all that kind of stuff. But what we're talking about here is, we were talking about earlier in the year about DALL-E 2, which was the first one of these image generators that was available publicly out of the research lab. And at the time, it was very, very bare bones. The only way to really show it off is to say, oh, well, how about a Red Sox pitcher drawn by Picasso? And that's what you would get. But now the tools have become a lot more involved and a lot more up to what they can do. Even back then, and I feel that even more strongly now, the boring stuff is give it a text description of the image you want to generate and take what you get out of it. The interesting stuff is when you are working hand in hand with the artificial intelligence, where just as if imagine that I don't have use of my hands and I'm just simply saying, give me a seaside picture, and they generate a seaside picture. No, I want it to be night, not day. And actually, I want footprints but no people, and it keeps adding elements. DALL-E 2 added a couple of features that kind of start to give that. I think I sent you a couple of pictures there where a street scene, just a simple nighttime street scene in my neighborhood, and then later on, it has this new feature called infill. So I can just throw a lasso, throw a circle around a section saying, see that part of the bare sidewalk? I want a penguin riding a skateboard there. And in front of the car, I want like a raccoon who's dressed up like a race car driver. And I want, in front of the coffee shop, give me a squirrel drinking a cup of coffee and put a cat inside the window who's looking at the squirrel drinking the cup of coffee.
You can see these images on youtube.com GBH News.
Yep.
So when we had the conversation this summer, it was more just about the nature, for me, it was more about the nature of art, and it's emotional, and it comes from us as human beings, and you can see if it's a painting, it's a picture, you can see the artist's hand, you can see their making in the work. My take on this has now evolved even more. When you're looking at images like the one that you just showed, what the software is doing is it's scavenging the internet and it's pulling images from everywhere.
No, it isn't.
A lot of it is pulling images from everywhere, including galleries where artists may have their work represented, or online. There have been issues with not filtering out scenes of trauma or porn. I mean, this software can go everywhere to collect this information, so there could be copyright infringement. It is harnessing everything from a lot of it is harnessing from everywhere, and there's no entity to police this at this point. Yes, we are at the inception of AI and where it enters into the art world. I talked about this recently with the MIT Museum, and just the same collaboration that you were talking about, that you can put in images and the AI software will help you finish that image. So you are co-creating, just as I sat down to an exhibit at the MIT Museum and I wrote one line of a poem and it wrote the next line. So there was this exchange, and yes, it can draw more creative aspect out of me, presumably, because it's giving me a charge, it's giving me a prompt to respond. But I'm deeply troubled by how, when it comes to imagery, AI is collecting material.
That's a very fair response. I don't know which AI models that you've been researching. The ones that I've been looking at, like Stable Diffusion, like DALL-E 2, they don't actually, if you say I want a penguin on a skateboard, it doesn't search the internet for an image of a penguin.
Maybe not one artist's rendering of a penguin, but it'll pull from different artists to render that penguin, won't it?
Yes, but we're talking about billions of images. Just to make sure I'm being clear to people who are listening, it's the algorithm. The basic algorithm is really complicated. The only simple way I found to explain it is that it basically starts with literally static. And it's basically saying, it's telling it's another part of its component saying, hey, this is actually a picture of a penguin on a skateboard, but as you can see, there's a lot of noise here. Can you denoise it so that we can see the penguin on the skateboard? And as it keeps iterating and iterating and iterating and iterating it, it basically keeps asking the question, is this a picture of a penguin on a skateboard? And at some point, it says, yes, this is 98% match for what you described. That's what it gives you. So those AI models I'm talking about, aren't simply cutting and pasting. That's a misconception that a lot of people have. You're more informed, and you raise one of the most important questions, that there are two levels of how are we abusing artists here. Simply by virtue of the fact that it is simply looking at billions of images that have been posted to the web, how much of it is that, look, a friend of mine is a wildlife photographer, and he's shot like thousands of pictures of eagles. That's his business, and he posts a lot of them. Do these AI models and the makers of them and the people who are now selling access to them owe him some money because, no, it's not reproducing his pictures, but his pictures taught the AI as part of, again, an anonymous crawl of the entire internet, what an eagle looks like and what a good eagle photograph looks like. This is actually more relevant in a couple of specific examples. Stable diffusion is a new word that we didn't really talk about before because it created, again, we go back to the subject of chaos. Before, the tools we were talking about were under control of researchers who were very timidly letting these things out and limiting what they could do. Google still doesn't give people access to their own image generators. But another company created this thing called Stable Diffusion, and they open sourced it. So 200,000 people have downloaded the source code, and they are free to make this into whatever tool they want it to be, skipping over all of the rules that DALL-E and Google put in and say, no, you can't have abusive imagery, no, you can't have photographic imagery of famous people. And because, again, now these are developers who are working on it, you can actually target and victimize a specific artist. There's a wonderful artist, I want to make sure I get her name correct here. Her name is Holly Mengert. She's a character designer for Disney television animation. She's also a children's book illustrator. So a developer downloaded, again, the source code and basically used that information to train the AI specifically how to make an illustration that looks like it was done by Holly Mengert. And all he needed to do was source 30 or 40 images. It wasn't thousands. And the results are not great. They're certainly not as good as what she would do, but it's definitely good enough.
Because we're only at the beginning, and this is my concern. There's no one to police it. If I were your photographer friend who's doing nature wildlife photography, I would be very concerned that if somebody likes his particular aesthetic, how he's shooting, the light he's using, the lens he's using, because it does give a certain vocabulary to a photographer that somebody at some point in the very near future is going to have ability to type in a few words and render your friend's photograph and render him obsolete, and they get it for free.
How different is this really than clip art? How different is this really than when I go to, a comic convention and there are artists who have done paintings of Star Wars figures based on posters that were done by the studio or images from movies that they have painted and they presented. Those people aren't getting paid. Like there's, you can build an entire ad campaign with clip art.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is that you have a name to blame, you have a name to sue. I'm a big comic book reader, and there are artists who are famous for tracing over, like, oh, this was an Adam Hughes Catwoman cover that you just traced and used as a panel in here. So you can name and shame them and possibly sue them. The problem that I think that you're referring to is something that I also acknowledge as a problem, that the thing is, you put one drop of water into an ocean, but it was still a very important drop of water. How do we identify your contribution to the AI model, and also how much should we compensate you? Now, also realize that I think we're still I think we might get there where a AI generator can create an eagle image would be convincing as something that my friend Scott Bourne did, but that is like a self-driving car at this point. You can get close to it very easily. Getting to it is really, really difficult. And most of the good stuff that's happening now is the tools that let people interact with it.
Well, the speed with which it's happening is kind of alarming to me. We've talked about this in all manner of news stories, including the guy who won the Colorado State Fair photography contest for using AI. He was very upfront about it, so it wasn't anything deceptive. But this is moving fast. We see, again, what's happening at the MIT Museum. I'm not maligning them. They're putting it out there because they want to invite the conversation. They want to invite an interrogation. What does this mean when you put human and human-created software together? But as always, we're going to be continuing this conversation. We need to have a big forum about this.
I
would love that.
I think this is a TED Talk.
This is so early that there are so many really good conversations and valid complaints and valid reasons to be excited and valid reasons to be concerned. And I think that we overlap a lot in those things.
We didn't get to space dust, but it's very important.
That's right, yeah.
And hopefully you will come back and talk about it because it's something that we should care about that as well. All right, Andy Anako, thank you so much for joining us. He's a writer and blogger. You can follow him for now on Twitter. Who knows what's going to happen at Anako. I'm not even going to give it to it because, why give him any more follows? All right, not you Elon. All right, we're going to take a quick break. For its 26th annual benefit show, the comics are coming home at the TD Garden. It's going to benefit the Cam Neely Foundation, including some names you might recognize. John Mulaney, who we've referenced already, Dennis Leary, and Lenny Clark. And guess who's here? Lenny Clark is here.
So excited about that.
He's going to be joining us in just a second. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming on youtube.com GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, the LGBTQ community is reacting to Maura Healey's historic victory in the race for Massachusetts governor. The embattled Boston City Councilor Ricardo Arroyo is getting his committee assignments back. And the matriarch of the family behind Route 1's famous Kowloon restaurant has died. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for our programs comes from you and the British International School of Boston, committed to helping students succeed, thrive, and learn in an environment of personalized challenge and support. In-person open house, November 20th, bisboston.org. And Fallon Health, care and coverage to meet the unique and changing needs of all they serve. Care for your struggles, challenges, and triumphs. That's the kind of care Fallon Health believes in.
Trusted. Local news. This is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim and Marjorie are out, and they'll be back tomorrow, but not at the BPL, back in our studio in Brighton. You probably know our next guest as the brash, loud, Boston-accented Uncle Teddy on FX's Rescue Me. I watched every episode. Here he is, sprinting out of an addiction treatment center he attended after getting out of prison on an episode of the show.
Taxi! Where? Hey, pal, you checking in? I don't know if you read the brochure or not, but one of the big things they expect of you is to stop drinking for life. It's lunacy. Think about this long and hard. This could be the biggest mistake you ever make. Then here is Bob, Jeeves. Pronto.
Of course, that is the unmistakable voice and humor of Lenny Clark, and he's here with us at the BPL. He'll be performing alongside Dennis Leary, Chris DiStefano, Jimmy Fallon, John Mulaney, Carolyn Plummer, a whole host of people for Comics Come Home to benefit the Cam Neely Foundation. Lenny Clark, welcome to Boston Public Radio.
Thank you so much, Jared. Thank you.
Yes, your first applause of the day.
Hey,
Excellent.
okay, hey, guys. It's the first time I've ever been in a library, but you're running a show. This is fantastic. Now, before we get going, is there some way you prefer to be addressed?
No, why?
Sue's good.
No, just Sue's good.
And Jared's good. Well, because of all the pronouns. I don't want to upset anybody.
I
got
get
the
it,
pronouns and adjectives and adverbs. I'm still trying to figure out what a dangling participle was.
Yeah.
I have no idea what to call people. People say, call me whatever you want. I don't care. I try.
If you had known that dissecting a sentence was going to be so important, you would have paid more attention in 8th grade.
I wouldn't. I was at the Catholic school. I was too busy getting beaten. But the point is, and I didn't have any trouble with the priest. I did. But the nuns, oh my God. I had nuns, they beat me round the clock. And my parents, if I went home with a ripped shirt and blood and all my pants are torn, they'd say, what happened to you? I go, I get hit by a car. Because if I told them the nuns beat me, they'd throw another beating on me. They said, we're paying good money to have them slap you around. So, yeah, I am, you mentioned my voice, and I was doing a commercial there for someone said, how long has your voice been like that? And I go, all my life. Don't scream, kids. Do not scream. You end up like this. But John Mulaney, I love John. He's so funny. And, there's so many things going on in my head, and there's no, you better direct it.
Well, first of all, how you feel, because folks have been concerned about you've had a number of health scares this year. You look fat. Look at, if this is what the result is, I'll take 3. What the heck? I mean, come on. But you're doing good. You feel great.
Yeah,
you look tremendous.
Thank you. I'm an old guy, And when the Mass General Hospital saved my life several times.
Man's greatest hospital, MGH.
God. Oh, yes. And Dr. Lamalia and Dr. Mansour. These guys, I have a team working on me. In the last 18 months, I've had a stroke, a minor heart attack, a major heart attack, and then 5.5 hours surgery to repair a flutter. And it was wild because we're at the hospital, and I remember the Celtics were playing, and I was so nervous, I kept going to the bathroom, and they said, where's Lenny? And she's in the bathroom. So I walked right into the operating room, hopped up on the table, said, let's go, fellas. Celtics are on at 8:30. 5.5 hours later, I made it. I'm like a cat. I'm running out of lives.
I mean, what's the effect that has? It hasn't stopped you. It hasn't changed you, it seems.
Well, you know what? Before I had the AFib taken care of, I hold the record at the Mass General Hospital for being hit with the paddles.
Really?
Yeah. It's like it's like a phone. Well, people don't know what phone books are. It's like this big. Right? They don't. They know it's a phone book. Yeah, right. Sorry, kids. But what happens is they were zapping me so much. One of the doctors said, we should do an ablation on you. And I said, okay. So they went up through the groin and burnt my heart, and that worked out well. But then I had another problem. So, I'm glad. Hey, look, I'm playing with house money. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm so happy to meet you two. I feel like I'm on firing line. Remember that show?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. All right.
So talk about some of the work you've been doing. We're going to get to the event in just a little bit, but you have been working steadily for, I think, 532 years.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you are just...
I was at the Last Supper. I told Jesus, stay away from that Judas. No good.
And every time you pop up, I forget what I was watching recently with my daughter, but you pop up
defending Jacob. That was
that was the last time I was
just watching it.
And I screamed, Lenny Clark, Lenny Clark, and she's like, "What's wrong with you?"
And let me tell you about that Chris Evans.
Oh God,
what one of the nicest, sweetest people. He's a local kid.
Yeah, Sudbury's home.
Yeah, right. And I got to tell you, what a gentleman. And we did a benefit for Christopher's Haven. It's a place where kids can go and get medical treatment, and they take care of everything. He was the most incredible guy I've ever seen around children other than Bobby Orr. He was just so nice to everybody. And I said, wow, what a great guy.
People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive.
I lost again. I wasn't even notified.
Listen, I was with his uncle, former Congressman Mike Capuano, the other night.
Yeah.
The hunk-unk. That's what he's going by, hunk-unk. And he's a little unhappy. He lost, too. So maybe you and Cappy can get get and maybe get the State House reporter sexiest guys alive.
I'm sure I wasn't even runner-up. I'm mad, though. But he's wonderful. What a good guy. That was a great show.
That was a really good show. And it's always great to watch local stuff, too. So I was wondering, every time I see you pop up, I think you must know everybody. Everybody must know you. You get calls all the time.
It's so funny. When I was a kid, my dad, I come from a poor family. 8 kids in my family. We were born and brought up in housing projects. A lot of people call them condominiums now, but they're not going to fool me again. But my dad was always working to feed the 8 kids. And he worked for the Herald Traveler, and then he worked as like a janitor in buildings, taking trash out. And everyone was going, hey, Lenny, hey, Lenny, hey, Lenny. I said, Dad, who are these people? He goes, they're just nice people. And it dawned on me, he doesn't even know who they are. But I said, someday I want to be just like my dad. I want to go everywhere, hey, Lenny. And I achieved that, So, I got that going. going for me, but I did a movie recently I think you're going to really like.
Oh, about the Gardner heist?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
It's called The Art Thief, and it's a serious film, and directed by Arthur Ngeli from Provincetown, and it's all about it's taken with some
liberties.
Yeah,
couple liberties.
Oh God,
I'm here for you. Lynn.
Thank you.
I'm here for you.
So anyway, but it's about the robbery, and I learned so much about art. I'm coming from the project. I'm not like, oh, is that a Van Gogh? So I learned. I wanted to steal me a Rembrandt, and I wanted them to steal me Jesus in a Storm on the Sea of Nazareth. Yeah, and I went, and I looked at the picture, and it was so beautiful. I said, I might have stole it if I was around, but it was just. By the way, Rembrandt's only seascape ever done.
Yes.
Did you know that?
Mhm.
I didn't know that, but now
there's a great show on Friday nights on PBS that might answer a lot of those questions for you. It's called Open Studio, hosted by me, all about art.
I'll check it out. Yeah, and that Andy, I tell you what, I love
Andy Anako.
I love technological geniuses,
Yeah.
because I learned how to use the internet with porn, and then I learned how to use Zoom with AA. So I mean, you got to use what you can, folks. Hey, look, I didn't go to Harvard. I went through it, but I never stayed.
We're talking with Lenny Clark, of course.
So who do you play in the Gardner heist movie? I know a lot about this, having covered it many over the years. Who do you play? What do you think?
I play an art thief. Now, I know a few people that were suspected.
You do?
Oh, yeah, because I know people from the governor all the way down to the lowest criminal. I mean, I'm the only guy that stayed at the Liberty Hotel when it was a jail and a hotel. So that's how far back I go. But
it was hard to get room service because Buzzies couldn't always get it through the jail.
But some friends would throw Buzzies roast beef over the side to me. And I end up meeting the guy from Buzzies. He runs a bike shop, Cruiser Bob's in Maui, Hawaii, and you can ride down to Haleakala volcano on a bike.
Amazing.
Yeah, pretty crazy. So I play the art thief, and I work with some of these, a couple of English actors. And my God, Sue, these English actors, when you're talking about going back and learning more, there are English actors who have a better hold of English than I do, and they sound like they could be from around here, but me, I can't do that.
So let me ask you, when this is a thing I have with movies. I hate it, or just performances, television, when there is someone with a Boston or Massachusetts accent on, and then someone complains that it's not authentic. And I'm like, have you been to Sullivan's in South Boston when you get 44? And it's like, do you ever get someone giving you criticism? Like over at NECN and NBC 10, we have Matt Noyes, who's our meteorologist. He's from the area. Occasionally someone will say, I hate that he's pretending to be, that accent of his is not so good.
Really?
I'm like, that's how he talks, actually. Do you get that? Do you get that you're faking?
I've never got faking. I auditioned for Cheers. I walked in with the Les Charles brothers, and they said, "You're one of the funniest guys we've ever seen." I go, "So I get the show?" He goes, "No, you're never going to be on a show." I said, "Why? You don't sound like anybody on the show." I go, "That's what we sound like in Boston." And so that was and when I went to LA the first time, like 30 almost 40 years ago.
Last century.
I had to bring an interpreter. They didn't understand what I was saying. So, and they go, "What are you saying?" I say, "Are you a surfer?" And they go, "What?" And my brother would go, "He means, do you surf?" And he goes, "Oh, no, I don't surf." Yeah.
I remember that happened when we went to Disney World when we were kids, and they didn't understand my mom, and that was the first time I understood what a Boston accent meant and what it was, and that not everyone talked like that.
Oh,
apparently.
yeah. Oh, my God. When people would say, "Where are you from?" England? I go, "Yeah, you moved that ocean. Hell, we're neighbors."
So talk to us about Comics Come Home, which I always have this vision, especially since you've all been doing it for so long, that must just be like a party backstage, too, because you're all together.
Oh, my God. You know what? Dennis Leary, great guy. I've known him for almost 45 years. And he gets together the best comics in the country that are available, hopefully with some attachment to Boston. There's some that are just so good, like Jimmy Fallon. But Jimmy Fallon comes because his dad went through a cancer treatment at the Mass General too. And he comes to do this. And a lot of the other comics he brings. It's crazy, And everyone goes up and. No one wants to have a bad night. You really want to pick it up a notch, But me, I don't have to worry about repeating myself because of the stroke. I have short-term memory loss. And I said to my doctor, short-term memory, isn't that the one you need? Because the long-term, this stuff I'm trying to forget.
Right. So you just get up and you're like, I'll tell it again. I'll just keep doing this joke till someone laughs. And I'm fine. I'm happy. Who cares? I'm getting paid whether you laugh or not, right?
No, I don't get paid for this one.
Oh, that's right.
We do this out for the right reasons, Like a lot of young comedians, they say, well, how are you always on TV or in the press? I said, I do a lot of charity work. And they go, and what does that pay? I go, it's a charity, you nitwit. Start giving out what you want to come back,
Lenny, that's exactly where I was going to ask you the next question is because of social media and YouTube and Instagram and a lot of performers of all types are able to sort of chart their own course and say, I'm going to be a comic, I'm going to do stuff on Instagram, I'm going to do it on YouTube. And of course, because of the pandemic, we've been all, at home in the distance and all of that. What's your advice to young performers in general who are, now just started re-emerging? I tell folks, get out and perform wherever you can. Do stuff for free. Get out, whatever it is, whatever your realm is, get involved and do it. Don't worry about making the connection or making the money. Get your experience.
That's so good that you say that, Sue, because I tell the kids the same thing, but like my wife is a charter fishing boat captain. It's charter, and she's a successful singer-songwriter. She's got like 3 albums. But she said, how am I going to get experience? I said, I got a guy. So we went down to the Martha's Vineyard Hospital and played for the elderly people. And she said, this was wonderful. I go, and they appreciate it. I said, now we'll take you to a dive bar. It's going to be a whole different thing. But maybe some of the elderly can come to the bar. But yeah, get out and do charity work. If you really want it, practice your craft. And it's like you say, I know you can all be these interweb superstars. But like Rodney Dangerfield told me, he said, you got to walk the boards. You got to get up on stage and walk the boards. And it's been a big help. Now, one thing, I wanted to mention, now this Elon Musk thing. I know everyone's down on Elon Musk, but and I hope you watch it, Elon, I want to be your pal. I want to be friends with him. I don't even know how to Twitter. And do we have a bird? No bird? Black bird? Blue bird? Green bird? I don't care. I want to be his pal. You know why? Because when I was a kid, my parents said to me, you can be whatever you want in life. And you know what I want to be? An astronaut. Did you guys want to be an astronaut?
Absolutely.
Of course. Did you really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you apply for the job?
Not at all.
Well, how are they going to know? So I applied, and they said no, and I was heartbroken. Then I graduated from college. I had a few in me. I stole my father's car, drove down to Cape Kennedy, Cape Canaveral, Cape Cod, some Cape. I was pretty high. And they went in and they said they can't use me. But Elon Musk has got his own little... So if I become friends with Elon, maybe through Joe Rogan, I'll say, Joe, you hook me up with Elon. And Elon, what do you want to do this weekend, Lenny? I go, can we go up in the spaceship? You know what I mean? And if I'm his pal, of course, Lenny. You can go up twice.
It's always a Massachusetts connection. Rogan will get you all hooked up there.
God. Well, Rogan, Rogan said, Lenny, you gave me my start. And I said, really? Because I don't remember.
Oh, it's your fault.
Yeah, back then I was drinking a lot. But he's been so good to me. All these guys, a lot of the guys that are big superstars now, and girls, we started at a Chinese restaurant in Emmett Square in Cambridge. It all started as a joke. And a lot of them are giant superstars now, And I'm still here, but it's okay.
Here you are at the Boston Public Library talking to Sue and Jared.
First time I've ever been in here. I love it. I think it's great. Periodicals, that way. I don't even know what a periodical is, but I know the fiction, nonfiction, all that crazy stuff.
So can you talk about politics in your shows? How do you feel about that these days?
You know what? My mother told me, don't talk about politics. And when it comes to money, don't fool with the IRS or the mob. So far, so good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But you know what? The big thing about the politics is we're so divided. Everyone is so divided. What are you? I'm an independent. And this Democrat will say, you're not an independent. And I go, why don't you look at the independents as a chance to get them on your side rather than go, we hate you. And I go, okay, I'll go with them. I'm an independent. I voted for, my congressman on the Cape. I love that guy. And he's a Democrat, and I voted for Charlie Baker. I thought he was wonderful. I vote for whoever is going to do the best job for the people. I was good friends with Tip O'Neill. Yeah, Tip O'Neill was great to my family, and I was raised as a Democrat,
Lenny, is it? I mean, we're old enough. We're older than Jared, the two of us.
You're not old.
I'm about to be 61.
I got stuff in my freezer older than you, and you look great.
Thank you very much.
Jared, you're a kid. Oh my God.
He's a baby.
Oh, he is. Look at that skin, that face. Oh,
he's glowing. He's glowing.
Yeah, you are. You're glowing, Jared.
Even when we were growing up, though, there was a divide, right?
Yes.
But if you went to a comedy show, like my mom was a big fan of Rusty Warren and Jody Field, right? And we would go see.
Who was the congressman that came out of the combat show? Wilbur Mills.
Yeah, Wilbur Mills and Fanny
Bryce.
Fanny Bryce?
Yeah. Oh, wow. This is old stuff.
It's our audience. They get it. So, but you would go to these shows, and I went with my mom to see Don Rickles. You know,
loved him. Yeah.
And it was, aggressive comedy, and everyone laughed, even if it was you and it was about you. Like I remember Don Rickles, he had Pia Zadora open for him at the Chateau de Ville. And the whole first act, all he did was make fun of Pia Zadora.
Exactly.
And then afterwards, she was like the funniest. I mean, can we get there again? Can we get where we think our own stuff is funny and we can go sit and enjoy and then maybe get together?
I only hope so. But Sue, I'm too old to fight that battle now. There's things I say that there's not a malicious bone in my body. I don't sit home and how can I upset these people? How can I upset? I want everyone to have a good time. It's just like I'm the type of guy, walk down the street, you see a guy who's not as happy as you, go, hey, how you doing? You've done that. Said hello to a total stranger, have them ignore you. What do you do then? Right? What do you do then?
It's at home. That happens to be at home.
Right. So then you go, I'll never do that again. Not me. I'll follow the guy for blocks. Hey, I'm talking to you. Try to be nice. But it's nuts. Yeah, I hope we can, so I really do. Because I think there's so many brilliant comics comedians, like Carolyn Plummer's going to be on the show, and she's so funny. She's a local gal from Watertown, and I mean Dennis. We sent her a tape. Dennis goes, "Get her," and I said, so this is good. And he's always giving young comedians a chance, And like I was hosting an open mic recently, but the COVID came. And I was getting 40, 50 people that wanted to get on stage. And I love that because I like to see the new act, I'm not one of those, I'm funny. Hey, I'm not funny. I'm nuts. You can tell by 5 minutes from me I'm insane. But it's made a good career out of it, I hope we can.
Yeah.
Do you spend a lot of it? How much of it just comes to you naturally? How much time do you spend writing? And I mean, I was struck by the Joan Rivers documentary where she kept those amazing card catalogs of all her jokes, and she literally filed them.
Do you know, talk about you, I was good friends with Joan. Joan used to drive George Carlin and Richard Pryor to their gigs. She was the only one who had a license in New York. And they would let her open because she drove. And they would treat her so bad. She says, hey, I'm getting on stage. Someone who really, and she was very good to me,
I saw her not too long before she died. She was playing the New Bedford Theater down there, and she was amazing. I've never seen anybody like that.
I saw her at the South Shore Music Circus in the 70s when her book, Having a Baby is a Scream, was out. And someone ahead of us got an autograph, and Joan said, who do you want it to? She goes, just Joan Rivers. She went, why? So you can sell it? You can sell it and make money off my name? And she yelled at her the whole way. It was hysterical. Hysterical.
Oh, my. Well, when I started doing comedy, there was probably only maybe 50 or 60 comedians in the country. Right. It wasn't a big thing back then. And I knew I knew Pryor, I knew Carlin, Rodney, Rickles, all of them, and they all were good to me because they felt like, well, this kid's nuts. But we became friends.
I want to ask you a George Carlin question because the documentary was out, which was great recently. But what I love about George Carlin is that at any moment in time, people on the extreme right and the extreme left are quoting George Carlin to prove that they are right. Would he love that?
He would love it. He would love it because, George had a good gig at Caesar's Palace. And he said, but he had to be clean. You got to be clean, George. He says, I don't want to do this anymore. I feel like I'm selling my soul. So he got a job at the Aladdin at 4 a.m. And someone said, who's gonna be out at 4 a.m? Just the people I'm looking for. When I met George for the first time, we were on a flight at Logan, American Airlines flight, going out to LA, and we were in the last 2 rows in first class, and they closed they closed the thing, and George goes, "This is pretty nice, huh? Watch this." So I pull the curtain back. We're never going to be able to finish all this slob stuff. And we became instant friends. And he would call me when I had a heart attack. He'd go, "Hey," it was pretty nuts.
Yeah, good times, good times.
Yeah.
So we're excited about the event coming up. What can you give us a preview? A topic you're going to really lean into?
It's like Jared said, I'm not really sure, but I will talk about the art thief and how it was filming in Provincetown, because they were so nice to me. I mean, some of them a little bit too nice.
Well, you're a good-looking man.
Well, I don't know about that, but these guys, they had a few drinks in them. I may have looked good, but it's insane. I mean, and even if you don't care for me, this is the beautiful thing about Comics Come Home. Even if I'm not your cup of tea, doesn't matter. There's guys, there's women, it's just a great collection of all different types of comedians, and you're going to at least like one, you'll probably like them all.
All right, we're talking, of course, to the great Lenny Clark. Thanks for coming to the library. Glad you could find it. That's very exciting for him to find the library.
Thanks, Jared. You guys are terrific. Keep up the good work. And what an audience. I love these
We
people.
love them. All right.
Let's get cappuccinos for everybody. We'll get all wound up, and we'll go around like crazy people.
On Lenny, of course. All right, so Comics Come Home, of course, a benefit for the Cam Neely Foundation. Get more information at camneelyfoundation.org. We're going to take a quick break. We're going from this to that.
Okay.
New England Conservatory is celebrating their 50th anniversary of Contemporary Arts Program with a 6-day festival series. We're going to talk to the 2 program co-chairs, and we're going to have some music just around the corner. You're listening to Boston Public Radio on 89.7 GBH.
Join us for a special stage edition of our virtual book club, Beyond the Page. This month we'll speak with acclaimed theatrical adapter Lolita Chakrabarty and director Max Webster, who have brought the best-selling novel Life of Pi by Jan Martel to the stage. Life of Pi makes its North American stage premiere next month, but join us on November 15th for the special preview event and discover the creative secrets behind this modern classic. RSVP at gbh.org/events.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Comcast. Xfinity Internet is committed to bringing speeds over a gig to power your devices while fitting your needs and a range of budgets. Learn more at xfinity.com/gig. And Boston Ballet, presenting The Nutcracker. Dare to dream big with New England's favorite holiday tradition. You can gather with family and friends to see it live at the Citizens Bank Opera House starting November 25th. Tickets at bostonballet.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, live at the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. As you probably have guessed by now, Jim and Marjorie are out today, so I'm here with Sue O'Connell. They'll be back tomorrow, not at the BPL though. They'll be at our studio in Brighton. We're joined now by Hank Isnetsky and Eden Macadam-Somer, co-chairs of the Contemporary Musical Arts Department at the New England Conservatory, which is celebrating 50 years this month with a series of concerts starting on Saturday, running through next Thursday. For more information, you can go to necmusic.edu/concerts or stick around for the next 20 minutes because they are performing. And yes, we've got lots of music on the way, including singer Janice Octavia Allen. She is here, and we'll hear Hankus and Eden perform as well. For now, happy anniversary. Congratulations. Nice to meet you both.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Talk to us about, what it is that you do and how exciting it is that you've been doing it this long.
Well, we are delighted to work together at NEC, and that's been going on for about 10 or 12 years now.
Yep.
And I have been there, though, since 1978. I was chair of jazz before this, from 86 to 96. But this program started in 1972, and what's really been amazing is to watch how the music world has kind of come around to be very much like what we do at NEC, which is really to move away from the concept of music being in one genre and really to be open to really an individual approach to music. And we feel that the people we see coming through our program are people who do that. People like Sarah Jarosz and John Medeski, Don Byron, Aoife O'Donovan. These musicians have kind of gravitated, toward the program, and we have, programs at all levels. But it's really a program where we see music as a continuum, and a continuum that you can't leave out the 20th century. You can't leave out Black improvisation. You can't leave out anything really that's going on if you really want to be a musician today.
So Eden, how do you start to tease that out and find what is most resonant and what speaks to us in this moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think all of our students who come in come from very unique backgrounds. Everybody who comes to our department has their own voice, has their own idea of what they love about music and what they want to pursue as an artist. And so when they come, we really work with them on what they're bringing in already, and then we present them with a lot of examples of artists that maybe they've never heard before, types of music they've never discovered, and we give them lots to listen to. We do tons of listening, tons of singing, and the idea is that really by exposing yourself to an incredible array of music and thinking about being a musician holistically, so not just separating out performance from thinking about the music and the history of the music and the social impact of the music, but kind of bringing that all together, the tradition, the contemporary aspects of the music, you really start to tease out who you want to be as an artist. So you can bring in all those different elements to your playing. You start bringing in all of these new sound worlds to your playing, and suddenly, instead of working with a very narrow palette of artistic sound and concept, you're working with this vast array of sound and ideas.
And Hankus, how do you manage that, right? So this is great, right? Everything is open for us to use to find our voice, but at the same time, everything is open to us to use for our voice. So where is the editing? Where is the sorting?
Well, we have actually 28 faculty members working with 36 students at the moment, which is kind of amazing. I mean, we have the whole faculty of NEC also at our disposal. So, I mean, we have students who are studying classical violin, but studying composition with Anthony Coleman or Carla Kilstedt. And all of our faculty are composers, performers, and improvisers. So they are mentors. Rand Blake actually was the first chair of this program and is our emeritus chair, and he's still with us. He's 87 years old, and he's still teaching full time, if you can imagine that. But he is that example of a musician who had so many things in his background that he took in that very rich scene in New York, in the 1940s and 50s, and just took all that in. And then when Gunther Schuller was starting this program, he thought of Ran as the perfect person because it has never been about reading music. It's always been about listening in a detailed way and then having mentors to work with to critique what you're doing and shape.
Let me interrupt. Well, why is that key, listening versus reading music?
Well, because as Gustav Mahler said, the best of music is not found in the notation. And one thing about it is that the entire 20th century really is a place where recorded music took over as the model. So that, Billie Holiday was listening to Louis Armstrong, and we wouldn't have Billie Holiday without Louis Armstrong. We wouldn't have Charlie Parker without Coleman Hawkins and Art Tatum and Lester Young. And the recordings became the key to creativity so much in the 20th century. And they certainly are now. But now, with the internet and with global communication being so big, there's really nothing that you can't really avoid anything in your continuum. You really you need to be listening and listening and listening. And when I look at our students and what they listen to, it's funny. I mean, some people, with kind of the old fogey mentality would be saying, "Oh, this music today is terrible." I think it's amazing, honestly, what people take in these days because they have access to everything.
So we're going to continue to talk to you, but you're both performing right now. And if you could, before you make your way over to where you're performing, if you can just introduce us to what you're performing and tell us about Janice Octavia Allen.
So we've invited one of my students from years back at NEC, fantastic gospel singer and jazz singer and just singer all along, all together, originally from Jamaica, who is going to perform something that has been a staple of our curriculum really since we started, which is African American gospel music. And so we're going to go to Mahalia Jackson, who's one of those role models, one of those mentors that nobody can avoid if you're trying to learn music. If you don't listen to Mahalia Jackson, then you're missing a huge part of what is American music and what needs to be in your vocabulary. So we decided to do a song that Mahalia Jackson famously performed at the Newport Jazz Festival in 1958. It's been recorded in many versions, but we're going to do her version of On My Way to Canaan Land.
Great, so we'll invite you over. I'm so struck by that notion of the listening versus the reading, because you understand how culture is passed over and passed along, and it's this oral tradition of it, and there's something to me that's just so magical about it. Not to say that there's anything wrong with passing along the written and studying more academically, but it's just so rich in that regard.
Right, and it also allows you to bring yourself to it first before seeing what it is.
So I think we are ready.
I'm on my way to Canaan land. I'm on my way, to Canaan land. I'm on my way to Canaan land. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah. I'm on my way. I had a mighty hard time. I'm on my way. I had a mighty hard time, but I'm on my way. I had a mighty hard time, but I'm on my way. I'm on my way. Glory, hallelujah. I'm on my way. If you don't wanna go, don't you hinder me. If you don't wanna go, don't try to stop me. If you don't wanna go, don't hinder me. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah. I'm on my way. To Canaan land. I'm on my way to Canaan land. I'm on my way to Canaan land. I'm on my way. Glory, hallelujah. I'm on my way. If you don't want to go, don't you hinder me. If you don't want to go, don't you try to stop me. If you don't want to go, don't hinder me. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah. I'm on my way.
Amazing.
Thank you.
That was brilliant.
Amazing.
Again, we're hearing music to celebrate NEC's 50th anniversary as Hankus and Eden make their way back to the desk. Janice, if we can ask you a quick question, just tell us as you step up to the mic how you found your way into that song. I could sense your own being, your own personality come to that.
Yeah, I believe any song that you do, you have to believe it, because if you don't believe it, no one else is going to believe it. So you have to just kind of embody the song and the words. I don't sing songs that I can't identify with or bring the most out of. So that Canaan Land is one of my favorite songs.
Well, we certainly heard it again. That's
great.
Janice Octavia Allen. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so we're back talking about the actual festival. It's going to be over 6 days. What can folks expect? What's the cost? What's the nuts and bolts?
Well, the great thing is the cost is
free.
0. And all you have to do is get to the conservatory for all these various events. We're going to start with a masterclass with the great Jamie Haddad, who taught at NEC, and he's one of the most interesting percussionists around. He plays with Sting. He's been playing with Paul Simon for the last 20 years. Plays with Esperanza Spalding. And he used to teach at NEC, now teaches at Oberlin. The second day, we're celebrating Rand Blake, our founding chair, and we're showing a movie that a French filmmaker made about Rand, and also 2 book launches, actually. A 600-page biography and a book called Storyboarding Noir, which is about Rand's fascination, really, with film noir, and written with Gardner Hardman, who used to work at NEC, and now they're best friends. And if you haven't heard about Rand Blake, in our 50th anniversary concert, which is so that event, I'll say, is 6:30 in the Eben Jordan Room at NEC, and on Sunday, the 13th. On the 14th, actually, the Chamber Orchestra at NEC has been working on a piece of mine, a suite for mandolin and orchestra. We're featuring one of our juniors, one of our third-year students, G. Rockwell, who's a mandolinist who just won the Fresh Grass competition down in Nashville on the banjo, and he's playing mandolin on a piece called Chagall's Mandolins with the the NEC Chamber Orchestra, and that's at 7:30. On the 15th, we have our 50th anniversary concert, which will feature a lot of music by the composers, performers, improvisers who teach at NEC, and large-scale pieces in many cases. But one of the things is Rand Blake, who will be playing on that concert. We're going to actually start out with a 5-decade compilation, 7 minutes long, of Rand playing solo piano in Jordan Hall. But there's a huge variety, and the nice thing about that concert on Tuesday is that we're both paying tribute to people who've been great innovators on our faculty, but also featuring really timely works. A piece that one of our faculty composed about the Parkland shootings. A piece that one of our faculty composers, Linda Chase, set the Pope's encyclical about climate change. So a movement from that.
Well, it's just this conversation that NEC has been having, and for people who don't know, although I'm sure they're aware, it's such a renowned school. So Eden, I'll ask you one question before you work your way back over to perform again. But what would you say, with 50 years of this program and really focusing on contemporary music, what's the impact it's had on music around the world, do you think?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think that's incalculable, honestly. I mean, whenever I've gone out into the world and played, I'm always running into artists who have run into artists from our program, who've heard about our program, who are excited about what we're doing, or artists who have never heard of it and suddenly have learned about it and are dying to check it out, because there's no other place that people are doing what we do. There's no other place where you can come in and bring this incredible amount of freedom and also have the rigor of the program that we provide, where students are getting a very disciplined approach to taking their creative energy and harnessing it and studying really intensively to come out with all the skills they need to be a very creative artist, a very unique artist, and also have the skills to take on pretty much whatever kind of work they want to in the music industry. So it's a really wonderful, holistic approach to learning music and to playing music, and you get to be with these incredible artists day in and day out. It sort of feels like being at a really incredible music festival all the time.
So Eden, you're going to play the violin and sing at the same time.
Yes.
How does that happen?
It just happens. It sounds like a trick, and it's not. I mean, I started doing this because I started playing classical music when I was very young, but I've also always loved folk music and fiddling, and it's very common in the world of fiddling that one might sing and play. And so I was doing a lot of that, and I was working on a piece specifically by Rafe Vaughan Williams, the composer Vaughan Williams, written for voice and violin. And as I performed it with another singer, I thought, she's great, but I want to sing this the way that I would sing it as a folk singer. And so I started playing around with some of the movements. I thought, well, I can't do the whole thing, but I'll just do some of the movements. And then before I knew it, I was doing the whole thing, and I was taking it beyond what was written on the page and bringing in English traditional folk dance. And so So then I started writing my own music, and then more recently I started, thanks to a faculty development grant from New England Conservatory, was able to commission some works to be written for me by composers who are very active in the scene today. One is Faye Victor, who will be coming in the spring for a residency in April, but Gordon Bieferman, who wrote this piece, The Sway, and it is such a great piece, and it's really written for me to do.
I want to ask you one more quick question
Absolutely.
before we hear from you, because I was struck a couple of years ago when Lizzo, who we all know, was out, had kind of broken onto the scene. Of course, she had played Boston Calling a few years ago and playing the flute. And one of my younger contemporaries, I guess that's kind of an oxymoron, but one of my contemporaries who was younger said something to me like, I didn't know they really used real instruments anymore in pop music. And it wasn't so much that the flute, like that Lizzo played the flute, that in that type of music and in the way that Lizzo performs, but that it was a real instrument that was played. Do you hear a lot of that in necessarily just in the pop culture world, that we've moved so far? It's great, I can write a song on my computer and I can use GarageBand, but at the same time, to your point about listening first, actually playing the instrument, feeling the music through an instrument is so important.
Absolutely. I mean, the students who come to NEC usually get that, and that's why they want to come to NEC, is because they know that's what we do.
Yeah, technology is the tool. It's a tool that you use to express yourself, and some people express themselves beautifully through technology if you can do that. Unfortunately, the sound world of it is kind of limited, actually, compared to human beings. Still, thank God. So, these human sounds are, I think, going to be around for a while. And not only that, but the younger generation has really, I have to say, a lot of the younger generation has rejected them and reinvigorated the acoustic music scene. And we have a lot of students who have come through our program who are from that background. And then they just have invented hybrid bluegrass. Crooked Still with Aoife O'Donovan was really like the first band that did that.
So Eden, are you ready for us?
I am ready. And
All right.
I would just say that this is an excerpt of the piece. This is right from the middle of the piece.
Yeah, it's a 12-minute piece.
Run aground,
This way is the way out. This way is the way to the way out. This way, not over there. There's no way out of here there. This way gets you there, gets you over, past the gate. This way, left at the traffic light. This way, left at the stoplight. This way, left at the red light. This way, left at the ultraviolet light. This way, left and don't turn right. Right? Right is a riot. Right? Right is the wrong song in the wrong place. Right? It's good to know nothing, be nothing. Right? It's good to be right up in it. Right? It's good to win it and to break it. Right? It's good to be supple in the spine. Right? Right is the wrong reason to back down. Right? Right is dead to the world, dead to you, dead set on it. Right? Right up and down the coastline. Right? Right up and down the valley. Right, right up and right down into the mine. Mine's the one that's missing. Mine's the one they forgot. Mine's the one they used to stole from me. Mine's the one that you flew over. Mine's the one that you flew over again. And back. to reason. Back to work. Back to back. Backed up. Back up. Prepared for an attack. Backed up to the edge. Backed up on the shelf. Back off. Take off. Take it off. Take it back. Take your mind off it. Take a spin. Spin around. Wait around. Tweet it out. Can't wait. Wait your turn.
Eden Macadam-Somer there. That was great. Just amazing. Love it.
And so much of you in that as well.
Yes.
Fully percussive for the audience who's listening. Feet, everything, in addition to violin and your vocal performance. And you're a little bit out of breath, too.
A little out of breath.
It took a lot out of you. Well, thank you both so much for being with us. And again, happy 50th anniversary for NEC. What a great way to celebrate with this host of free events and concerts and shows, all starting very shortly. Sue has all the details.
That's right. 50 years, New England Conservatory's Contemporary Musical Arts Program. Of course, we also heard earlier the stylings of, Janice Octavia Allen. If you want some more information on the 6 days of concerts, you can go to necmusic.edu/events. Thanks to everybody for coming. Thank you, too, for joining us. That's just great. Love to have the live music. So appreciative of it. All right, coming up, the holidays, as you know, just around the corner, and all sorts of family traditions will rear their ugly heads. We're ending the show with open phone lines and text lines. What family traditions would you like to see go the way of the dodo? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
On Tuesday, midterm voters sent plenty of mixed messages, splitting tickets up and down the ballot and across the country. But in states as different as Kentucky, California, Michigan, and Vermont, one clear message did emerge: protect reproductive rights. That's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com. And National Grid, providing access to electric heat pumps that can help businesses achieve their sustainability goals. You can learn more about heat pump technology at ngrid.com/future.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are live at the Boston Public Library. I'm Jared Bowen in with Sue O'Connell. So there was a piece in the Washington Post this morning all about the traditions we inherit from our parents and make a conscious effort to leave behind. It's a lot of the small, inconsequential stuff that sticks in our minds. Things like leaving your feet on the coffee table. Who really cares about that anyway? Or where are you supposed to store your rubber bands, just as my grandparents did? Do they belong in a drawer? Or, as they did, on the handle of the basement doorknob. With Thanksgiving just around the corner, we've got all family on our minds, and we want to know what habits and customs you're consciously parting from, big or small. What did you grow up doing because your parents insisted and hated? Or I guess if you're feeling positive, what family traditions do you love? That's kind of where I'm landing, I think, actually, and can't wait to continue or share with future generations. So all about the family traditions. Love them, hate them, keep them, throw them out with the recycling. Give us a call or text us at 877-301-8970. Again, our number is 877-301-8970. I think, Sue, I'm at that point where I want to go back to the traditions. I want to carry them forward. They're very meaningful, and they keep me happy, and they bring lots of great memories for the most part. It was funny just to think, I actually didn't write that part about the rubber bands on the doorknob, but that's exactly what my grandparents did. And it brought me right back to their house, and the smell of the basement, as soon as you open that door, they had all the rubber bands on them. I don't know how that started, but clearly it was a thing.
You know what my family tradition is?
No.
Clutter.
Clutter.
We just leave things around the house. And I realized the other day, I kind of looked around, sort of post-COVID. I know we're still in a pandemic, but back to work and having been home for a year and a number of issues and not relaunching the cleaning traditions. I'm sitting in my living room like, boy, I hope nothing happens to me because people will think that, I've been ransacked or they tried to come in and serve a warrant or something. But it's also interesting around tradition. Like, I have a lot of cousins, as Jim Browdy likes to point out when I'm here, but I come from a small family. And we didn't have a lot of holiday traditions. And with my daughter, who's now 22, we did. And lately I've been sort of falling off the tradition bandwagon. Didn't carve Halloween pumpkins this year, didn't really have a Halloween tradition. And you would have thought that I had, canceled Christmas about, her reaction to not caring enough about traditions. So I think it's also personality type. I'm happy to just go along with whatever Jared's doing. If I'm coming to your house, I'll go along with it.
I think that we also learned from the pandemic when things were disrupted and there was so much change that we are creatures of habit. We like things to be stable and we like things to be kind of in a standard way. And I think traditions fall into that. But the Washington Post piece was talking about things like growing up, I could never put my feet on the coffee table. And now in my house, I will have my feet on the coffee table, even if my mother is coming over. And somebody else was talking about her mother insisted on having a post office box and having to go there every day. And so she was adamant that when she had her own house, she would have a mailbox and not something downtown at the post office. So that's what we're talking about. What do you want to hold on to? What do you want to let go of? What did your parents do that drove you crazy? Or maybe now you're seeing the value of, like my father is so adamant about turning out all of the lights, even though it cost, as I tell him, cents now. Cents over the course of the rest of his life, probably, because everything is LED, but still the lights must be turned off when you leave the room.
We're taking your family traditions, both holiday and otherwise, every day. You can call or text us at 877-301-8970. The folks over at BuzzFeed last year, they certainly entered into this pool. A couple of suggestions that they posted at BuzzFeed. This one from someone at Cat's Movie. Every time we get a new pet, we name it after a song or an artist. We welcome it into our home by gathering in the living room and playing the music of that artist. That's a good tradition.
That's a nice one.
And then I'm going back about 20 years with this one, but we had a Hide Justin game. It was literally just a postcard of Justin Timberlake, and we had to hide it around the house. The weirder the hiding place, the better. I had a group of friends a few decades ago that one of them had gotten this really ugly holiday present, a plate that you would hang on the wall, which was totally not his thing. And every year, one of us would get it as a gift. So it passed through about 10 years that finally, you would get the ugly plate as the gift, and that was a fun tradition.
I was just talking to a friend yesterday who is coming home for her 30th high school reunion, because high school reunions are often on Thanksgiving weekend and everybody comes home. And it's quite poignant, though, isn't it? That you all go home, you're all seeing your family and maybe with your parents again, and suddenly you're not, however that old that makes you, almost 50, over 50 years old, but you're a kid again, going back to your hometown and seeing all of your friends and probably doing some of the same things, going to the same, well, I was going to say arcade, but they don't really exist anymore, do they?
Well, Karen from the Newsfeed Cafe and we just went to our high school reunion. Just a couple of weekends ago.
Wait, was it the same high school reunion?
Yes, Karen and I not only
that.
went to high school together from the Newsfeed Cafe, we grew up together.
I had no idea.
And so we're friends, and that's why I have a sandwich today and you don't.
Yeah, can you ask Karen why there's no spicy Jared today?
No, but there is a Sioux roast beef sandwich today because Kelly's in Beachmont Beef.
I see how this is going.
Yeah, but we did go back and play all the same disco tunes that we danced to in the 1970s. So that was a tradition. One of our staffers, can I out him? Can I name you? Of course, Aiden has shared with us. Aiden grew up in a family with a principled stance against McDonald's after watching Super Size Me. It's been a staple ever since I was old enough to get it for myself. So there you go, McDonald's.
Yeah.
So you go for the McDonald's.
He goes
So
for
good,
the McDonald's,
yeah.
and he's saying it's so good. I still
He's
think of
rebelling.
that movie every time I pass by that place. Did you watch that? Remember what that movie where
I did.
Where in the concept was so fascinating. Where if they say that it's low calorie or it's healthy for you, how bad can it be if you're keeping within your daily calorie count to eat McDonald's
Yeah,
every
that's
single
true.
day, every single meal, and what it did to him? That was revolting.
I had a series of phone calls from Jim Browdy once. Seriously, he called me on a number of Saturdays. I don't even remember why. And each time, not in a row, but over a period of a year, and each time he called me, I was actually in the drive-through line at McDonald's. And Browdy would say, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm in the drive-through line at McDonald's. What are you going to get?" And he would get upset that I wasn't going to get the fries. Like, I should just
How
go
could
for
you
the
not
whole
get the
thing.
fries?
See, you're upset too. All right, we have a texter
Yep.
here. My family started a tradition that our grandkids have never heard of and loved: Christmas crackers. Those things that you pull, it makes a pop, and little jokes and trinkets and a paper hat fall out of it. So that's a fun tradition
They're
to start.
lovely. It's a very English tradition, I believe.
Yes, one of the New York Times people said that instead of a hat, do you remember what they said they would put in it?
I don't remember, and I read the same story as you, and I can't quite.
Yeah, it wasn't a
recall.
hat. Maybe it was money. Anything that has money, I'm all for.
That became a tradition for a while in my family to have scratch tickets stuck in
that's
your
great.
napkin at Thanksgiving.
We're taking your texts and calls at 877-301-8970. What family traditions are you hoping that you can bring back, or do you want to institute? Or what family traditions have you rejected, or have your children or grandchildren rejected? Because there's nothing better than telling your kids, boy, we're going to watch It's a Wonderful Life, because we've watched it every single holiday, and then you put them down in front of the TV, and they're like,
And traumatize
"Are you
them.
kidding me? This is the slowest, most boring movie on the face
And the
of the earth."
darkest, you know the story,
I
right?
know,
How
it's
I had
dark.
never seen.
No, I
do you know
don't.
the story? So I had not seen It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know how I made it this far in life. I think, well, I do know why. For a while, I just had never seen it, and then I was a brat and thought, well, I won't see it at this point like everybody else. And then I got to the point where I thought, well, I need to see, if I'm going to see it, it might as well be on a big screen. I can't just watch it on a television. And sure enough, we had an event with the Brattle Theater, and Jim, I can't remember if he had seen it or not, and we hosted this screening for all of the It's a Wonderful Life virgins. Like me, we all watched it at the same time, and I was horrified by how dark that film is, and I can't believe it's a holiday movie because it's not until the very, very end that it gets happy.
No, it's dark, dark, dark. Okay, so our friend Rom in Worcester wants to just take point with you, Jared, that turning out the lights makes sense, not just from a money perspective, but it adds, saves energy and adds up when we do it. So come on.
When you have a lifetime of comments with your father, you're not thinking about climate in that moment. That's I'm totally on board with all the energy-saving devices, but this is about father-son relationships here.
Another poster to the BuzzFeed article said one of their traditions, we do a beer contest every Christmas Eve. Everyone of age brings a unique beer, and we all do a blind taste test and rank them. That's something I can get behind. I actually was able, at 6 years old, to tell the difference between Schlitz and Budweiser.
Really?
Yeah. It's a party trick that didn't.
Can you still characterize the difference?
One is flat and tasteless, and the other one is flatter and more tasteless.
We have Evelyn here at the VPL who says, our family tradition, 12 grapes, eating a grape with each of the 12 clock bells strikes at midnight of December 31st to welcome the new year. That's
I like
lovely.
That. That's a lovely one.
It's very lovely.
We're taking your calls, 877-301-8970. If you don't call or text, Jared and I will just continue to tell you what our holiday traditions have been or have not been. My parents, here's one that I had to sort of reject. We grew up in Revere right along the blue line, where the blue line was like 100 yards away from our house. And my mother, God bless her, insisted on over-decorating our little summer cottage that we lived in so that the people going to and from work on the blue line would have something to look at, except it was a travesty. It was every different type of light. We had Jesus on one side, we had Hanukkah on that side, we had Santa on this side, and she would buy them at a bargain place called Bob's Discount Store on Revere Beach.
Yeah.
So we had like 2 of the wise men, we didn't have 3. So when I came of age and had my own home, I decided I was going to go completely waspy and decorated everything in the soft white light and the white tree, and my family completely rejected me.
Very tasteful and boring.
Yeah, so I'm back to the multicolored lights.
So my decorating is I close the drapes, project the lights, and have all these figures dancing in front of the windows where it looks like there's a party every night. I sit home and I order pizza. Or wait a minute, I'm just describing the story to Home Alone because we run out of things to say. So I'm just going to start talking about movies and pretend that they're my own life. Is that what's happening right now?
Yeah, it's okay. It'll be fine. Let me see. Some other traditions that we have around our house for... we do Easter. We do still do the Easter egg thing.
The hunts and whatnot?
The hunts, even if it's just in the apartment. And I have to say...
Haven't you run out of clever places to hide, though?
No.
No, if you have a lot of clutter, then I guess...
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I'm sure every time we move something, we still find an Easter egg. So at least it isn't. Hey, we have some phone callers who are calling in. You can also text us at 877-301... 8970. Another quick text. I used to jump when midnight comes on New Year's Eve when we were kids so we would grow taller. I like that. I still want to do that now, but I'm a dad. My kids will probably look at me funny if I do. That's Fred from Rentham.
I love this one. Starting on Thanksgiving, we watch How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the Jim Carrey version, as many times as we can until Christmas, and we absolutely love it. And also have hot cocoa on Christmas Eve and wait for Santa. Kind of boring, but the kids love it. Sounds really lovely.
And this one on Sunday growing up, we had early dinner at 3. I had 7 siblings. Everyone had to come correct. No sports gear. I have 2 girls, and we do a semi-formal dinner on Sunday afternoon. That's great. All right, let's go to Bob in Gloucester. Hey, Bob, thanks for joining us. What family traditions are you embracing or rejecting?
Oh, yes. When we were kids, my dad built his own stereo. First, it was a hi-fi, which was one channel, and then stereos became the thing. And he built everything. He built the cabinet, he built the amplifiers. And so after all this work, on Sunday afternoons, he'd put on his classical music, and as kids, we hated it. And we kind of complained. And that was a real bummer for my dad, to stop, playing every Sunday. So it was more like on occasions he'd play the music. But he really relaxed, and after that, he always read the Sunday Times from cover to cover.
Thank you so much for calling, Bob.
Yeah.
That sounds just nice. Imagine reading a newspaper cover to cover again. Wouldn't that be exciting?
It would be. Well, this has been so much fun talking about our traditions with you.
And my clutter.
But hosting BPR with you today has been great, Sue
Jared.
O'Connell.
Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you in December, you and me, baby.
Yes, we're back. The replacements. Oh, I am doing the outro, so thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. Tune in tomorrow. Jim and Marjorie will be back, but don't come here to the Boston Public Library. It is closed for Veterans Day, so they'll be at our studio in Brighton. The guests there include folks from Project Comeback, a nonprofit where veterans help care for rescue horses and care for themselves in the process. We'll also have Callie Crossley, Shirley Young, and Sue O'Connell back for another day. Plus a live Music Friday, a trio of Berkeley musicians raking in hundreds of thousands of fans through TikTok, their tiny habits. Our crew is Zoe Matthews, Aidan Connolly, and Mackenzie Farkas. Additional support provided by Gia Orsino and Brendan Deedy. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Thanks to our BPL team, Sai Patel, Colin Cockrell, Evelyn Brito, Brad Lewis, and Angelica Marrero. Thank you again, Sue. It's been a pleasure.
Great to see you again, Jared. Thanks for having me.
I'm Jared Bowen.
I'm Sue O'Connell. You're listening to Boston Public Radio on 89.7 GBH.
Have a great